Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for coming to join me on this Sunday, July 21st of 2024. Not expecting a huge crowd today because it's a beautiful day here on the East Coast. In New York, it's a beautiful day. The sun is shining, birds are singing, and it is a full moon today. So if you're feeling a little bit crazy, blame it on the moon. Anybody feel it? The full moon is coming. It looked full last night, but the official full moon is tonight. Or today at some point. Did it already pass? Hang on. I don't want to be wrong on this because this is very important. The moon is very important. Well, the illumination is at 100%. Moonrise is at 9:02 p.m. So perhaps that's where it is on the East Coast today. Full moon. Shame on the moon. Yeah. Chat was getting a little crazy before I even came in here. What? What? Are we going to have another vitriolic case to cover together? Another one. I have been doing a deep dive into this case since like yesterday, and there's so much to it that there's no way we're going to cover it today. But what I want to do is do like a basic overview of it before we start covering the trial, because it's a crazy case and there's a lot of strong feelings on both sides of this. So I'm going to ask, we can all refrain from vitriolic chatter today, just to hear a little bit about this case. And before we make our decisions, hello, Rochella. The full moon is called a buck moon today. Thank you, Sioux City Sue. Today's the buck moon. Hi, Rochella. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was so nice to see you yesterday. We'll be here until we head out to the beach. Beautiful day here on Long Island. It is gorgeous. I know. I wanted to come in at 1 o'clock because you know what? There are people on all coasts and internationally that want to hear about this story. Thank you, Sussex Sandra says, I'm not familiar with this case. That's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to do background summary. And we're going to talk a little bit about it. And I'd like to go into this case like jurors, not knowing a whole lot about it, but there's so much information, misinformation out there on the internet that if you've just seen things in passing or you've just watched particular shows in passing, you might not really have all of the versions and the facts. And I think that in a case like this, it's important to wait until we hear all the evidence before we can make a decision. Thank you, Bayou Babe, for waiting for my opinion on this. I think it's very hard to judge what a person would do in a certain situation, especially a woman who's claiming to be a battered spouse. I've seen a lot of chatter out there that people think that she's making it up, she's weaponizing the system. And there are a lot of people out there who believe her. And I know who my viewers are. I know who my viewers are. And I know what my viewers have been through. And I've heard your stories. And I know how strong you are, and I know how triggering these topics can be for you. But so many of you have written to me. We covered the Maya Kowalski case together, which was a tragic story about a young girl with a chronic pain disorder who was ignored, gaslit, to the point where her mother took her own life to try and get her daughter out of state custody. That was a terrible, terrible case. And so many of you wrote, again, like this. Okay, Elizabeth is like, she's guilty. Okay, she's guilty. Does she have a defense? Can we listen to all the evidence? Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm not going to really tolerate. So this might not be the place for you to watch this, Elizabeth. It just might not be. There is a thing in the United States. There's a constitutional protection that we have here where defendants are innocent until proven guilty. And when people walk in with that kind of an attitude, she's guilty. She's guilty. I read an article, she's guilty. I watched the Vinnie Politan's show, she's guilty. I watched some talking heads talk about it, she's guilty. Florida has the Stand My Ground law, which may come into play here. There's also a defense known as the battered spouse syndrome. And whether or not those things apply here, we're going to have to wait and see what the evidence shows in this case. And it's in Florida, it's in Manatee County. You're talking, oh, great to see you too, Peter, yesterday. So nice. Too bad it wasn't under happier circumstances, but it was so great to see you and your wife both. And you guys do so much for my channel. And I love you so much. So thank you. Thank you, Lori Life 360 for the win. Innocent until proven guilty. I know how many of you in my chat, subscribers, are survivors. A lot of people don't like to be called victims. So you may call them victims. They call themselves survivors, and they've been through it, and they've escaped, and they've gotten through it. So yes, thank you, Jennifer. Innocent until proven guilty. This is a case that needs to have all the evidence presented before I can make my mind up. Yep. And I had an opinion too. Hearing the little about this case that I did. And I think we all can't help but form opinions based on our own personal experiences, based on our own knowledge and our own lives and the things that we've been through and seen and watched our friends go through and our sisters go through and our mothers go through and our daughters. But she lost her stand her ground hearing, right? She didn't testify at that hearing. And that's really, see, here's the thing. Like, this is part of the, like, what misinformation I'm going to call Mama Bug, not to just call you out on this, but the stand your ground hearing was a motion to dismiss. So Ashley's attorneys filed a motion to dismiss to get the case thrown out based on stand your ground immunity. So she lost that, meaning that the case is still going to proceed to trial. She didn't testify at that hearing, which I think was a very smart, tactical decision. But it doesn't mean she can't raise it as a defense. So I think that has a lot of people confused. There was a motion to dismiss. We're going to look at parts of it because it gives her side of the story. And it's going to tell us her version of events because there's only been one version of events out there. Ashley, yeah, the judge didn't buy it, but she didn't testify, Mel. She didn't testify, right? So all he said was, I'm not going to toss the case now. The case is going to continue on to trial. So Ashley hasn't given any statements at all since she shot her husband, her estranged husband. There's so many conflicting stories about whether they had reconciled, whether they were gonna live together in Maryland. But there's so many of you that seem that you don't really know anything about the case. So I don't want to get too deep into it before I tell you just the story of Ashley and Doug. Okay. And where she's coming from and where she came from and where he came from and the things that happened before the shooting. Okay. Aunt BB, thank you so much for being a member from you were my first member ever when I opened up memberships, which was probably exactly 9 months ago. And Aunt BB says she's a survivor and ultimately a winner to get away. Right. And I don't think that we can judge until we see the facts. And I think, quite frankly, I think Ashley's going to have to testify at her trial in order to claim self-defense in order to get a jury to buy it. That's what I think. Thank you, Shelby says, what, for becoming a member? And also AC for becoming a member. Happy Sunday to you, Melly, and thanks for the deuce. Lovely cupcakes on top for the shadow, for the super sticker. And Pilgrim's Shadow, thanks for the 5 in the shadow of the moon. Peace be with you. Peace be with you too. And this is really, really a really tough case for a lot of people, but I just don't like the case. She did. She did, Linda. She did. She's claiming it was in self-defense. And she's claiming that she was in imminent fear of for her life and that there had been a history. There was also a custody battle going on. So there's a lot of things at play here. So let me just tell you a little story about Ashley and Doug before we really get deeper into it. So Ashley Benefield is now 32 years old. She's charged with the second-degree murder of her estranged husband, Doug Benefield, on September 27th of 2020. She's facing 25 years to life. The trial is being held in Manatee County, Florida. The judge is Matt White. So he's Stephen Matt White, but does he go by Matt White? Those of you that are local or that have been following this for a long time. Agreed. I agree, Melly. I agree with you. So much going on within the relationship, but we're only hearing one side of it, right? We're hearing from like cousin Tommy. We haven't heard from Ashley, so we don't know. So yes, absolutely. Just like, in the Depp v. Heard thing, there was a lot going on both sides of that thing too. I don't even want to bring that up. Jules is here. So this is why it's a contentious case. And Jules says, oh, MJ Masoli. Jules sent me an email this morning. It was our eyes and ears in the courtroom at the Maya Kowalski trial, which was also in Florida. And she went to court every day. And she tells me that she's going to try and get to court for Ashley Benefield. This is going to be a very popular trial, and it might not be easy to get in there, but she's doing it. She's doing it. Thanks, Chrissy the Crone. All right. So she's charged with second-degree murder. She's facing 25 years to life in the shooting of her estranged husband, Doug, on September 27th of 2020, Manatee County, Florida. Yep, I have the website, Nikki. I'm going to pull it up. The DA is Suzanne O'Donnell. The defense attorney is Neil Taylor. And if you've been watching any of the pretrial stuff, it's going to be interesting because coming off the Karen Reed trial, this is a very different judge. I like him. I think he's fair. I think he's really smart. So far, I like the attorneys. And so it's going to be interesting for us to cover a trial gavel to gavel that has such different types of players in it. 500 jurors have been sent summonses to appear for jury duty tomorrow. I don't know if they're all coming in on the same day. I think they are. Trial starts tomorrow, but jury selection starts tomorrow. I'm not going to cover that live. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I'm going to cover the Karen Reed hearing live. That's at we're going to convene for that at 1:30. And then we will start live coverage of Ashley's trial as soon as openings are scheduled to start, which could be Tuesday. Could be as early as Tuesday. So the defense theory is that Ashley was defending herself against an abusive husband. And the prosecutor's theory, I mean, this is just nutshell type theory, is that Ashley was doing everything in her will to keep their daughter away from him. And so I ask you, can't both of those things be true at the same time? I don't know. I haven't heard all the evidence yet. I've read the motion to dismiss, so I know what her theory is. She hasn't given any statements. She didn't call 911. And I see people on other channels saying that was intentional that she didn't call 911. It's intentional because she didn't want to give a statement. Tara, didn't the judge say there wasn't a scintilla of evidence about the poisoning? This is another thing that I want to correct, because my understanding is that the judge did not say there wasn't a scintilla of evidence of abuse, but there was not a scintilla of evidence of poisoning, because Ashley accused her husband of trying to poison her. So we're going to have to get some more clarity on that. But like, again, that's one of the things that people read and they're like, oh, well, the judge said there wasn't a scintilla of evidence of abuse, and so therefore she's guilty. But in any event, let's move on. Thank you, Wrestler's Mom, because I am very interested in this one. And I am very interested in both sides of this. I'm interested in hearing from survivors, and I'm interested in hearing from children of survivors. And it is complicated, right? It is complicated. And I think for us to just sit here and say, oh, she's guilty. She's guilty. She had the gun in her hand. She's guilty. Right? Melly, I can see where you're going with this. You don't think she's scared of him. All right. Well, scintilla is one heck of a word, but I think that had to do with the poisoning. So let's just take a step back, try and unwind this from at least an unbiased, innocent until proven guilty kind of stance. I don't know. Can we do that? Do you think we can do that? I think we can do that. I think you can all do that. Here's the other thing. There was a 30-year difference between Ashley and Doug. So there are some allegations of coercive control. Ashley was 24 when she met Doug. He was 54. So let's just take a step back. Try and forget everything that you think you know, or that you do know, or you know from researching the bejesus out of this case, because so many people did. It's so complicated, Jojo. I agree with you. I don't think that you can judge how someone can react in a situation. Yep, the daughter Eva is on TikTok. Yep. Thank you, Karen. Just being part of the chat is a trigger for me, but I am stronger. Thank you. Please. I mean, it is an interesting power dynamic. Okay. So there's 30-year difference between them. Let's go back a little bit. Be more, yes. And the daughter is picketing outside the courthouse. We're going to get to that as well. This is similar to the Karen Reed case in the sense that, not really similar at all, because she absolutely was holding the gun when he was killed. But there are peaceful protesters, supporters outside the courthouse in Manatee County, Florida, wearing lavender. The daughter is now 6. And they're standing outside the courthouse with signs that say things like, well, if I had that article up, I could tell you what the signs say. We'll get to that. Hold on. Punished for surviving. I have a redacted photo of the daughter outside the courthouse, which, by the way, I completely disagree with. So let's start there. Okay. Ashley Byers trained to be a ballerina from the time she was 8 years old. That was her dream. She wanted to be a ballerina. She even dropped out of high school to train to be a ballerina. But by the time she was 21, the dream had died, as it was a very competitive industry, as those of you who know. Not enough gigs, too many ballerinas, not enough dancers. So she pivoted. She started teaching ballet to children, and she started sewing costumes for student workshops. There's a lot of, chatter out there that she's like some sort of swimsuit model, and I think that that's something that the the, the TV stations like to run with. But here it is for those of you who want to see it. She built a portfolio and tried to pivot to modeling, but it didn't work out for her. So I don't really know why they're showing. I mean, they're saying that she's a swimsuit model. Here's a picture of her in a swimsuit. I don't know if that makes her an actual swimsuit model, but I guess that's makes the story a little bit more salacious, right? So she built a modeling portfolio, and any attempts that she made to try and break into the modeling business didn't really work out either for her. She's no stranger to trauma. She suffered from paternal abandonment. And there are very little details on this. If any of you know, no, I know many of you probably have been following this case for a long time, but she did have a rocky first marriage that ended in divorce. And I don't know when that was or how old she was. Yeah, I didn't see a swimsuit either. Nosy. Hi, Nosy Rosie. A rocky first marriage that ended in divorce. And I don't know when that was because she was only 24 when she met Doug. So she was no stranger to trauma. In late of 2015, she met Donald Trump at a campaign event and told a Vanity Fair reporter that her career took an incredibly different turn. There's a long Vanity Fair piece on this that was published all the way back in September of 2021, which would have been about a year after Doug was killed. She had apparently admired Trump for years and said that he was so impressed with her patriotism and her knowledge of guns that he offered her a job on the spot. Soon, the article goes on to say, she was spending long days at crowded rallies, sleeping at Mar-a-Lago, and traveling on Trump's plane. According to Ashley, Trump even promised her a job at the White House. Nearly a year later, when Ashley Byers was 24, she met Doug Benefield, who was 54 years old, at the Palm Beach mansion of Dr. Ben Carson on August 25th of 2016, after Ben Carson had ended his presidential campaign. So, when I do a deep dive into this, call me Alice, right? Always call me Alice because I turn into Alice. So I had to find out what Ben Carson's house in Palm Beach looked like. And here it is, because we do that here. Sometimes we go to Zillow and we just look at Zillow for fun. And he bought a house and sold a house right around the same time. So quite honestly, I'm not sure if this is the exact mansion, but I'm pretty sure it is. So this is where Ashley meets Doug. Dr. Ben Carson's mansion in Palm Beach, Just a stone's throw from Mar-a-Lago. It's always fun to look at real estate that you can't afford. He paid $4.4 million for this house, and it is stunning, right? It is stunning. Thank you, Kay Layla. I'm going to highlight that comment for later. So that's where they meet. She's 24, he's 54. Keep that in mind. Doug had been divorced once at the age of 28 after just a 6-month marriage. And then he was widowed just 9 months prior to meeting Ashley, when his wife, Renee, who I think was something like 56 years old at the time, was found dead face down in their bed. There's some questions around that as well that have been brought up. And when Renee died, Doug was left a single dad of a 15-year-old daughter named Ava. Now, when I tried to find out more about what Doug Benefield did for a living, the details on his occupation are very scant and they range. There's a lot of things that Doug Benefield apparently did or said that he did. It was reported in Vanity Fair that in his RNC donor records from 2014 to 2016, he lists his occupation alternately as a venture capitalist, an engineer, and an entrepreneur. According to one of his friends, he was always doing different things, starting different businesses. According to 48 Hours, Doug worked as a consultant for technology companies and government contractors. So there's a lot of, I don't know, sketch about what he did for a living. So usually when someone's a consultant, it's kind of like, what are you consulting about? Remember the Seinfeld reference? Like, are you an importer, exporter? Like, I'm an importer, I'm an exporter, I'm importing and exporting, like with Vandalay Industries. I don't know. I don't know. But a lot of people I've seen out there saying, oh, she was a gold digger. It's kind of like sketch. Like, we don't know what kind of money he had. We don't know a lot about him. So he meets Ashley 9 months after his wife dies. And also, according to Fox News, Fox 13 News in Florida, he was a retired naval lieutenant commander. So again, call me Alice, because I had to go diving a little deeper into Doug and his background and what he did for a living. And apparently, in the Vanity Fair article that I told you about, one investor that was interviewed for the Vanity Fair article filed a lawsuit against Doug after believing that he was swindled when Doug convinced him to invest in his new TV production company. I think this lawsuit was from the 1990s. After coughing up an amount, the investor said he was too embarrassed to disclose, the project fell apart. The investor came to believe that he had been swindled. He said Doug would talk to funders claiming he had funds, but he didn't. He and a couple others involved in the venture had just spent wildly, enjoying themselves on investor money. Eventually, this man sued Doug, and he said, I knew I wouldn't get any money, but I was just pissed off enough that I wanted to do it for humankind, to put the suit out there to warn other people. I'm not blaming her for dating an older man. Oh, did somebody do that in the chat? He could also be a groomer, so I'm not judging her. Yep. Thank you. So as I told you, Ashley was a member of Trump's campaign entourage, and she was traveling to rallies and working in the campaign's Florida office. While Doug got the invite because he was close to some of Ben Carson's big donors. According to Vanity Fair, both were passionate about God and guns, or as they put it, God and the Second Amendment. In fact, in a text immediately sent to Doug after they had met that evening, Doug had already nicknamed Ashley Ashley Oakley, because apparently she had been carrying a firearm in her bra at the party. According to Vanity Fair, within 24 hours, Ashley was addressing Doug as my dear and thanking God for bringing him into her life. On the 27th, Doug flew to Israel for a week-long work trip, and he and Ashley continued to text with the incessant pace and desperate tone of lovesick teenagers. Are you always this sweet and awesome? Ashley asked after Doug invited her to join him on his next trip. Always, except when shooting something, Doug replied. So many of these text messages, I think, are going to come into evidence, so it's going to be interesting to see them. They sent each other hearts and Bible verses and favorite songs. She liked classical and country music, and he liked Frank Sinatra and praise music. And it said in the article that he sometimes put on the praise music when he left the house for the angels to enjoy. Ding, 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 ding. Thank you, anonymous Canadian girl, for saying what I'm thinking. Sounds like he might have been love bombing her. Remember, he was just widowed 9 months before. 6 days after they met, they exchanged I love yous over text. By the time Doug landed back from his trip to Israel, they had decided to marry. According to one of Doug's friends, apparently Doug would not consummate the marriage until they were, he would not consummate, he would not, you know what that means. YouTube has weird rules. Doug would not consummate the marriage until they were actually married. Does that make sense? Is that a tactic? I don't know. Yeah, right, Marianne. Not so much the age difference as it was they got married after 13 days. They told almost no one of their plans to get married, not even Doug's teenage daughter. Undeterred by their 30-year age gap and the fact that they had met just 13 days prior, they wed at St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Charleston on September 6th. With no guests except a witness and Doug's friend Tripp, who was the officiator. Doug's friend Tripp. Doesn't everybody have a friend named Tripp? So this was, 13 days after the meet. So this is 2016. So Ashley finds herself a stepmom to a 15-year-old girl, and she's closer in age to the daughter than she is to Doug. Yes, and he does reverse his vasectomy. So we're just going to give a brief outline here. So this is September 2016. By June of 2017, it is reported that Ashley found Eva's diary and read her diary. And that when she read Eva's diary, she allegedly found out that Eva hated her. All right, look, I've got, as you know, teenage girls. I don't read their diaries. I wouldn't recommend ever reading your kid's diary, but imagine that teenage girls read a lot of things in their diaries that they don't really mean. Did anybody here keep a diary when they were a teenager, and did they write all kinds of crazy things in their diary? They're just trying to work things out. I don't know. So I don't know whether it was true or not that Eva hated her. I don't know. A lot of people say Eva's still very active on TikTok and has a lot of opinions. And to be honest with you, I have not gone through her TikTok, so I don't know what her opinions are. And at some point during this time, the two of them started to put together a ballet company. And they wanted to start a ballet company that was inclusive to all types of ballet dancers, shapes, sizes, races, heights. And they went up and down the East Coast and they did auditions to get dancers to be part of their company. And they got them down to Charleston. And there was something like 47 dancers, I think, that came down there. And this was in the fall of 2017. So that was after this happened. But when Ashley found Eva's diary, They got into an altercation. Doug pulled a gun out of his boot and threw it at the wall after the gun didn't discharge. Before that, in April 2017, Doug punched a hole in the wall during another one of their fights. Then another time, he picked up a gun and fired it into the ceiling, which was the same day that he punched the family dog so hard in the face that the family dog was rendered unconscious. He later confessed to that in a written statement. There's also some threats that he made to her and also perhaps to his prior wife, because there were some text messages that they found from his prior wife where he threatened to blow his brains out on more than one occasion, which is something that sometimes coercive people will do to get you to not leave. Anybody ever experienced that? And there's some custody hearing audio that we're going to listen to where they talk about that. Despite that fight where he fired the gun into the ceiling, about a week later, Ashley was trying to be, according to her, outwardly happy. She said, "I'm a ballerina, I'm a performer, I can act happy when I need to." They hosted a celebration of their marriage, a reception at a downtown Charleston hotel. And this is the picture that many of you may have seen floating around, and that's what this is from. So for those of you who didn't know what Doug Benefield looks like, here's what he looks like. She put on the wedding dress, and they did the whole thing, the whole celebration of marriage, like a wedding reception. So then in the fall of 2017, they try to start this ballet company, this inclusive ballet company. And according to the dancers that were interviewed for this Vanity Fair article, they thought that they had deep pockets. And many of these dancers came down to Charleston, or 47 of them. They were told that this new ballet company had a $2.5 million budget. All of the dancers were promised eight-month contracts, and they were all told to come down to Charleston, and they were urged to sign year-long leases at a luxury apartment complex. And then they said the day they arrived, the dancers were greeted with a pizza party and a photo shoot. There was no studio in sight that they had promised was being built. And around this same time, Ashley found out she was pregnant. She had asked Doug to reverse his vasectomy, which he did. She found out she was pregnant. And she decides she's not feeling well. And she leaves Charleston to go to Florida to live with her mother. The ballet company, needless to say, fell apart. Many of these dancers were left unemployed. And after Ashley disappeared, Doug disappeared. So it was and that's initially what this Vanity Fair story was kind of about. So in August, Ashley leaves Charleston to go live with her mother in Bradenton, Florida, which is in Manatee County. In March of 2018, Ashley schedules a C-section, or actually she goes to the hospital and makes complaints that her husband was poisoning her with tea. And she gives birth via C-section in March of 2018. And apparently Doug did not know that the baby had been born. And then there's some hyperbaric oxygen treatments that happened for the new baby and for Ashley That begs a lot of questions too. So let's take a look at Ashley Benefield's testimony from a July 2018 custody hearing, because Doug fought for custody despite the fact that he had never seen the baby, didn't know the baby was born. So by July, 4 months later, there's already a custody hearing. And here's Ashley Benefield's testimony about her belief that her husband tried to poison her. Trying to keep this in as chronological order as we can. And this is from Vinny's show on Court TV, but I'm just going to play the portions of testimony for you, because we don't have any other statements from Ashley. The only stuff that we have are transcripts from custody hearings and other prior court proceedings prior to Doug's death. All right, where are we going here? 420. Just let me know that you can hear this. Oh, that's funny. That put up my my closed captioning. Wait, that's weird. I think you'll be able to hear it without the closed captions. Okay, here we go. No sound? Why no sound? Hold on. I can hear it. You can't hear it? Hang on.
I had responded
Can you hear it
to
now?
the rest of the conversation, and he became offended that I hadn't responded in a loving manner to his emoji text
hear it now?
message. And so he came home from work early, and I was in the
Hi.
bedroom, and he came in, and
Now you
he
can. Okay.
immediately became very.
Thank you. Now we're just going to rewind it to the 420. It's always 420 somewhere. Okay. Ready, set, go.
So the first time there was domestic violence between you and Douglas Benefield was when?
Well, the first time that he punched the wall was in April, but he started
April of
2017.
So in April of 2017, he punched the wall during the course of a argument or discussion, or what preceded the punching the wall?
He had sent me text messages with the kissing emoji, which I did not respond to, but I had responded to the rest of the conversation, and he became offended that I hadn't responded in a loving manner to his emoji text message. And so he came home from work early, and I was in the bedroom, and he came in, and he immediately became very angry and started accusing me of not loving him.
Okay. Some people are saying that she sounds cold. And here's one of the problems with not being able to see the witness's face, right? Because it's hard to just listen to an audio tape, but that's all we have here, and to try and assess someone's credibility, right? Or their emotion or lack of emotion. And quite honestly, some people deal with trauma by going blank and by not showing emotion, because that's how they've learned since childhood to deal with their trauma. So in the Karen Reed case, that's why it was so important to change courtrooms so that the jury could see the witnesses' faces. Could you imagine if they could only see the backs of the heads? How hard it would have been for them to assess credibility. So I think it's really hard. Thank you, Annette. Yeah, it's StreamYard. I know. Thank you. It's really hard for us to see her demeanor, right? And to assess her credibility. But listen to what she's saying. He got mad because she wasn't responding to her in a loving enough manner, or she wasn't responding to him in a loving enough manner.
And said that if I had loved him, that I would have responded with a kissing emoji or a heart back, and that he started accusing me of possibly having a relationship with somebody else. Said this just proved that he loved me more than I loved him. I, of course, told him that, none of that was true, but he became more and more angry. And he, at one point, he had turned to walk away from me. And he was standing in the opening of the closet, and I was standing right on the outside of the closet. And he turned around and he punched a hole through the wall with his fist. And I was standing on the other side of the wall, and the drywall literally came out and hit me in the face.
So how did a gun get involved in this discussion that the two of you were having?
I don't remember what exactly triggered that point, but he was sitting at the dining room table, and I believe I was standing to his left, and he pulled the gun out. I believe it was in his boot. And he pulled it out and he started waving it around. It was unholstered at the time. And
you're in front of him?
I was to the side of him.
Okay. So he's waving the gun around in your direction or?
All over, because he was yelling as he was doing it. He was using his hands and holding it. And I started screaming and I said, "What are you doing? You got to put that down. You're scaring me." And so he actually pulled the trigger, but I do not believe there was a round in the chamber.
When he pulled the trigger, where was the gun pointed?
He pointed it at the ceiling.
Okay.
And it did not discharge. So he then threw the gun facing me. It missed me. It hit the wall behind me, and it punched a large hole, which is the third picture.
The third page of the photograph?
Yeah, it's patched, but that was the hole that had been left in the wall from when he threw the gun. And I, at that point, was crying and very upset. And I told him he was scaring me. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but somehow, I guess he stood up and he went around to the other side. I believe he grabbed the gun. I don't know if it was out of the wall or how it got in his hand again. But he then, at that point, I had tried to leave. I was headed towards the laundry room because I was afraid. And he started screaming, and he told me that, this is a quote, that he was going to blow his brains out. And so I stopped and I dropped to the floor and I started crying and I begged him to not shoot the gun. And he said that I was going to have to watch him shoot his brains out. And
okay, you hear that? Does it sound like real emotion? I know it's hard to tell when you can't see her face. Exactly, Brooklyn Paisville. How does she sound cold? Is she supposed to recount abuse with love in her tone? Some people say they detach and they have to almost separate themselves from their body sometimes. I've heard it. I've worked with victims and survivors during the entirety of my 30-year legal career. I've heard from, and nobody There are no two survivors that process this in the same way. So it's just so hard to judge. And I saw so much judging about this online that I had to jump on here and cover this case.
I was screaming and asking him not to. I told him I wouldn't leave. I was literally on my hands and knees. And he, I guess at some point, discharged the gun. I didn't see him aim it at the ceiling, but the bullet went into the ceiling.
And then what happened?
I screamed, and you could smell like the smoke in the house.
Anybody call law enforcement?
No.
Did you go on to have a party within days?
I believe it was about a week later. We had been planning, since we'd gotten married, to have a celebration of marriage party, and all of my relatives from California had already bought their tickets and everyone was coming.
Why did you proceed to have that party after this event?
I think this is the judge questioning her. And I don't know, there's just something about these questions that's really making me mad. Well, did you call the police? All right, well, you know, like the trauma bond between, if this is true, if he was abusive, oftentimes survivors do not call the police because they still love this person. They don't want to get this person in trouble. Why did you continue to have the party? Well, because all of my friends and family had bought their tickets and they were already coming. And there's a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment involved with being a survivor, being a smart woman who finds yourself, or a man, in this type of a situation, in this type of a relationship. How did I get here? How did I let this happen to me? I'm smarter than this. So I don't like these questions. But let's keep listening.
Because I was afraid and ashamed, and I didn't want anyone to know what was happening.
You start to live full time in South Carolina when?
I would say in December of 2016.
All right. And you're in fine health other than your hamstring recovery in December of 2016?
Correct, yeah.
And does your health take a downturn?
It did.
When did it start having a downturn?
I would say by January, I had started having weird symptoms. The first and most noticeable was just extreme fatigue.
Okay. And did the extreme fatigue...
Thank you, Team Brittany, for bringing this up, because I was going to bring this up and I forget at which point, but I had a lead into Gabby Petito. But that's right. Nobody knew what was going on with Gabby Petito. No one. And why are people treating that case so much differently than they're treating this case? And the reason is because Gabby Petito is dead and Ashley is alive. But at what point does throwing a gun into a wall, shooting a gun into the ceiling, punching things, punching the dog until the dog, knocking the dog out. Okay. If anything else, I know that a lot of you are pet people. Does that horrify you? There was also a story that he threw the cat against the wall. I wish he would have told one. No, not in Gabby Petito's case. Nobody knew. Not even her parents. And you're right, Aaron. This judge's question sounds so old fashioned in his thinking of DV situations. Yes. And Linda Vergata said the same thing. Like, it's making it sound like it's her fault. I don't know. It just does. And this is why so many women don't come forward, right?
Persist during the entire time from January of 2017 to the time that you stopped living with Douglas Benefield?
It sometimes was worse than others, but yes, it was pretty consistent from that time.
And the day that you fixed that you moved out from his home was when?
August 26th, 2017.
Of 2017? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And in the course of living with Douglas Benefield, would he serve you food or anything that you would ingest into your body?
He would. We both enjoyed hot tea frequently. So he had begun a habit of bringing me breakfast in bed. He would also, multiple times during the day and a lot of times in the evening when we would go to bed, he would make me a mug of hot tea to go to bed with as well.
Okay. Was there ever anything about the tea that he would serve you that caused you concern?
Yes, on multiple occasions I told him that it didn't taste right. it was a lot of times very sweet to the point where I was so nauseous. I had gently tried to ask him to not make it so sweet because I like honey in my tea. And so he would put honey in my tea. And he multiple times got very upset and offended. If I didn't finish the tea that he brought me, he would get upset. One time I told him that I didn't feel well and I didn't want to drink it. And he started yelling at me and he called me an ungrateful and said that I was lucky that I had a husband who would make me hot tea. And that it proved that he loved me and that if I loved him, that I would have just been thankful.
Allegations that she says.
Okay, and there's Vinny. And there's Vinny. So that's the portion of that I wanted to play for you. And I see Scooby the dog is in here. This is insulting to real victims of DV. I think the judge has figured her out. That's all. So I ask you, Scooby the dog, and I really, really, honestly, I'm asking you, what makes you think, what makes you so sure that she's not a real victim? And I mean, I'll wait. You could type it in the chat. Like, I'm genuinely interested. I'm not being a jerk. Like, I'm genuinely interested. Like, what makes you think that she's not a real victim? I have to check and see if you changed your screen name to match the dog in this case. But the dog in this case, his name was Sully, the one that Doug punched into unconsciousness. But I'm genuinely interested in your opinion of why you think that she's not a real victim. I mean, is it something that you've heard? Do you know the family? Are you friends with Tommy, the cousin? Like, I'm genuinely, right. What does a real victim look or sound like? And this is a much larger discussion in this case too, because somebody said here, yeah, note to self, don't marry someone after knowing them for 15 minutes. Was she so desperate for love? I mean, my God, she was 24 years old. 24 years old. That is so young. Remember you when you were 24. I know that my audience, my demographic here, 75% of my viewers are 45 plus. So I'm trying to remember when you were 24. If you have a kid who's 24, like how young that really is. You know, a girl who had been abandoned by her father, who was desperately seeking a connection with someone. Maybe she had she was looking for a father figure. She desperately wanted a family. Thank you. Thank you, Scooby the dog. I appreciate that because she doesn't have to stay with him. He was living with her mother. He was living with her mother. What do you mean? Because she doesn't have to stay with him. She was living with her mother. She did. She did go to live with her mother at some point. But I think that, I don't know, you need to understand, or some people need to understand that not everyone is able to leave financially. There's also a trauma bond that happens where they still really love this person. And there are cycles of abuse and really, really high highs and really, really low lows and the apologies and I'll never do it again. And then, there's the love bombing and then the bad times. And then the time between the really high highs and the really low lows becomes shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And so I think that it's a generalization to just say she should have just left. I mean, she's 24 years old. She could go live with her mother, but she was divorced once. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of unfair to say that she's not a real victim. At this point, she's been caught in lies. I don't know what the lies are, but if they point those out, I'm happy to listen to them. Shaylee says, "Oh, MG, this testimony gives me goosebumps. I've seen and experienced exactly what she just explained. Him serving her tea sounds like love bombing after he abused her, then tells her how lucky she is." Well, that's the thing, Shaylee, is that she thinks that the tea was poisoned. And so it was after this hearing that I believe that the judge said that there was not a scintilla of evidence that she had been poisoned. And because of that hearing, in September of 2018, they started having shared custody. And then at some point during 2019, they reconciled for most of 2019. That's what some of the reports say. And there are also some reports that say in August of 2019, Ashley showed up to drop off their daughter and she was wearing an engagement ring. I don't know how true that is, but Doug apparently hired a private investigator who said Ashley was seeing someone else. Doug filed for divorce in August of 2019. Then she accused him of abuse. And this is just from an article, so I don't even know if this is true. Doug denied the allegations and CPS found no evidence of abuse. I don't know if that's true. I need to find the CPS reports. So I just don't know if that's true. Amy Lou, it took you 16 years to get out. I was so scared of him. I commend you for having the strength to be able to do it. Thank God. You know where else CPS didn't find any abuse? In the case of Tommy Valva right here on Long Island. Anybody know about that case of Tommy Valva? His mom, Justina, had been complaining for years that the father was abusive. I don't think he was current or former law enforcement. And little Tommy Valva froze to death in the garage because his father made him sleep there for wetting his bed. It's a horrible, tragic story. So I'm not going to put too much stock in the fact of, what CPS found or didn't find. And people are saying also in here, I highlighted a couple of comments. Amanda says, when you've been abused, you are not this calm about reliving it. I think other people have pointed out that not everybody reacts in the same way. Hi, Jill. Jill says you can't assess how someone's feeling or judge how they sound. Are they emotional enough? Do they sound cold? They said the same things about Karen Reed. 100% right. Jules says, I never called the police. My neighbors did, though, and I would hide in the bathroom until they left. Thanks, Jules, for sharing that. Jenny in Georgia says, she should have told her family what happened, in my opinion. I'm going to point out another case that I covered just recently. Let's see when I covered this case. Nikki McCain, Northern California. Her family knew about the abuse. They saw her with black eyes for at least 5 years prior to her disappearance. Her family knew about it. It didn't help Nikki. Nikki's missing now. Nikki's missing. The husband is still out there. He burned 100 acres of land. And the DV charges against him, 5 felony charges or 4 felony charges against him were dropped because she didn't show up because she's missing. So if you didn't watch that show on Nikki McCain, it's a short one. I think it's only about an hour. Sometimes we go for 8 hours here, so that is a short one. And so Jenny, I don't know. She only had a mom. She didn't have a dad. And Maureen Francis says, those of you that don't understand trauma should thank God. Thank you, Maureen, for being a constant supporter of this channel. And thank you. Mrs. Michelle O'Hare, thank you so much for the 20. Agree, Mel. I'm waiting to hear the case before I form an opinion. My biggest criticism against Ashley is having her daughter on the court steps with a sign. I survived DV, parents, and child abuse, physical, emotional, verbal violence. Protect the kids, 100% protect the kids. And I don't like it either. And I was saving this, Michelle, for later. I'm not sure if this was the one. Yes, because I was saving this one for later. So thank you, Scott, for pointing it out to me. Thank you, Mrs. Michelle, for pointing out that I didn't address it yet. But I was saving this one for later because I have a photo of Ashley's daughter standing outside the courthouse that I redacted. So I'm going to show you that now. And I agree with you. I don't know why this child is outside the courthouse. I 100% disagree with that. I don't know in what way this can be construed favorably to her. I just don't know if she's trying to garner sympathy. I just don't know. This is wrong. Okay. So there's a cupcake over her daughter's head, but she's holding a sign that says, keep my mommy free. And I'm not sure if this is Ashley's mom. If anybody knows, you can let me know. But these are the supporters who are outside the courthouse wearing lavender. The daughter is now 6. And this is tragic. Her mother is on trial for killing her father, and she's standing outside the courthouse at 6 years old holding a sign. I can't even defend this. If there's anybody in the chat who can defend this or give me a different spin on this, I like to always hear the other side. So if there is the other side to this, let me know. Because I just don't see it. I can't see the other side here. I can't see what can possibly be gained by having that young girl stand outside it. And I did a show with Collier Landry on the Karen Reed case. And if you don't know Collier Landry, he's an amazing young man. And he has a YouTube channel. And I would suggest that you go follow him because he's got a very interesting perspective. When he was a child, he was in the next room when his father killed his mother. And he was the pivotal, seminal, most important witness in his father's murder trial because he's the one who testified to what he heard. And he was a child. And so I would like to get his thoughts on this. Because this is a horrific thing for any child, right? Jules says, I'm going to be hard pressed to keep my mouth shut on Tuesday if that little girl's out there with a sign. I don't think the judge will let her in either. Let her in the courtroom. I don't think she should come in the courtroom. She's 6. But Collier he did a documentary on his experience. If I were Ashley's attorney, I would be like, what are you doing? Get that girl a babysitter. Get that girl home. She should not be out there. It's not a good look. There's another Ashley who says, imagine how John's niece and nephew are feeling. Don't agree with young children. Shouldn't get involved. His case is different. Me too. The little could have witnessed it. Yeah. I said that too. Ashley, I don't know if you were following me in the Karen Reed trial, but I said that. I didn't think there was anything anything good would come of having the niece and nephew testify. Because if Karen Reed was convicted, they're going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives, right? Now that there's a mistrial, are they thinking to themselves, oh, well, was our testimony not good enough to get a conviction for her? Like, it's just, there's nothing good that can come of it. There was no purpose for their testimony, in my opinion. It didn't add anything to the prosecution's case. I thought the harm of calling them to the stand far outweighed any testimony that would have been a positive thing for the prosecution or the Commonwealth. And I just did not agree with that at all. Bayou Babe says, I follow Collier and remember when that happened to his mom. Okay. So Ashley also found out that Doug put a tracker on her car, like a low jack. He was perhaps stalking her. He was following her around. He had hired this private investigator. And so that hearing that we just listened to was from 2018 in July. They started share custody in September of 2018. 2019, for most of 2019, they were reconciled. And that happens a lot too in these types of cases. But by September of 2020, so the date of Doug Benefield's death is September of 2020, Ashley Benefield ran to a neighbor's house with a gun, screaming, claimed that Doug attacked her and she shot him, and the neighbor calls 911. Somebody also said in here something about when an athletic woman kills a much older man, it's hard to call it self-defense. Well, Archangel, let me just show you a little something here. I just want to show you a little something that I found because Doug Benefield's Facebook is still up for some unknown reason. So you're calling her an athletic woman. I want to call you, show you. Doug's Facebook. There's one of his profile pictures. This is from July of 2018. So at the time that we were listening to that hearing, this is a picture that he posted of himself on Facebook. So I don't know. Archangel 1807. Do you see self-defense maybe now? Anyone? Is it just me? Bayou Babe's like, whoa. So at this point, he's like mid-50s, he's like 56. Here he is in a gym photo that he posted in June of 2018. I don't know if Ashley's in this picture, but this is him. Guy's jacked. He's in great shape. I don't think she could fight him off. Anonymous Canadian girl, a man like that punching the wall, that is very scary. Yeah. So, I mean, that's why, like, so many people have opinions about this case, but I don't know. I kind of feel like he could be scary. I wonder if in the autopsy report, I don't know if anybody has a copy of the autopsy report, but I'd love to see it. If they did toxicology on him, I mean, let's face it, most guys in their mid 50s cannot get into that kind of shape without maybe a little assistance. I don't know. Call me crazy. If you can, then you've got the natural gene and you're very, very lucky. Marie Max says age and physical stature know no bounds when it comes to DV. Much of it is manipulation, control, terror inducing. Anyone can cause that. Man, woman, young, old. Thank you. Thank you, Ruby, for that. Thank you, Mrs. Michelle O'Hare, for the 10. I'm new to this. Oh, you're new to the channel? Welcome, 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 Michelle. You're going to like it here. Bunch of strong women in this channel. We've been through it all. We've seen it all. We've lived it. We're here to talk about it now because these are things that need to be talked about. And also a lot of men here too who are really super cool. As I commented on the last live, your channel is the first and only channel I joined as a member. Oh, I'm flattered, Mrs. O'Hare. Mrs. Michelle O'Hare. Appreciate your perspective on cases. Thank you. I'd love to hear the toxicology too. I don't know if she shot him in the back, Jen. See, Jen, that's another thing that I think might not be accurate. Initial reports said she shot him in the back, but then there are some other reports that say she didn't shoot him in the back, right? So let's wait to hear about that. Shannon, I know Shannon's saying that too, but let's wait to hear more about that because I don't know if that's accurate. Just like in the Karen Reed case, we heard initial news reports said there is ring video footage of Karen Reed hitting John O'Keefe with a car. That never happened. So I need to know. Why did she shoot him so many times? I think she shot him twice. Brazilian girl thinks he was hot. Sydney Collin, thank you. Wonder if he was doing testosterone. I don't know. HGH. Perhaps roiding. Exactly. And if you know that things like that could make someone enraged, irrational. Those are side effects, right? Not judging. I'm just saying that it is real. Anonymous Canadian girl says initially the fear of being hit is almost worse than being hit. Thank you, Jacqueline, for saying absolutely right. Thanks, Jenny. Could have been a bit of testosterone. And that's why I felt like nobody is talking about this side of it. Everybody's out there like she's guilty, 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 guilty. Lisa, thank you for sharing this. My whole life I've experienced DV as a child, as a witness, as a teenager, as an adult, and my heart breaks for you. And yours and other viewers like you that have been through it are the opinions that I want to hear from. I want to hear what you think. Thanks, Jojo. We don't know. We don't know about if it was in the back or not. So let's yeah, it's purely speculation. Exactly. Purely speculation. I don't know. But cousin Tommy is the spokesperson for the family, and I'm not really Not really a fan of Cousin Tommy. We're going to look at a little bit of Cousin Tommy footage. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. My sister was a police officer in the DV division. She said that anyone being abused usually gets worse when the cops are called when they're trying to leave. Yep. When they're trying to leave or when they are pregnant. Gary B, trying to lighten it up a little bit. What kind of tea is he drinking? Oh, Serenity 10. Thank you for this. No consummation before marriage. Roids can make you impotent. FYI. Maybe some psychosis. Remember Chris Watts and those Thrive patches? I'm just saying, it's a possibility, right? Because when people say that an athletic young woman shouldn't have any trouble taking out an older guy, that she should be able to defend herself, I'm just saying. Amber, Dawn, them Johnsons. If he wasn't on steroids, he definitely was doped up on creative. And listen, I'm not victim blaming, victim shaming. He's the victim. Well, I mean, listen, maybe they're both victims. But he's the one who's no longer among the living. So I'm not trying to blame him in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying for us to try and wrap our head around what her state of mind might have been. And in Florida, there's a stand your ground law. And basically what it is the stand your ground law allows a person to use or threaten to use deadly force against another person if they reasonably believe they need to protect themselves against an immediate threat. And unlike many other states, they do not have a duty to retreat. Many other states, you have a duty to retreat. If you're being attacked, you got to run away first before you use deadly force. Not in Florida. There's no duty to retreat. So what this means is that in Florida, if a person believes they're in danger of being seriously hurt or killed and they're not engaging in criminal activity, for example, a burglary, a robbery, or something else like that, a drug deal, they are justified in defending themselves. Unlike traditional self-defense laws, the person doesn't have to try and get away from the attacker first. So there's that. Here's some other photos that he posted on the ferry to St. John. There's a picture of Ashley in September of 2017. There's the cat that I was talking about before, and that was September 2017. Snuffed, I guess that was the cat's name, and the hardest working woman on earth. And that's Ashley in the picture. This is from September of 2017, where it says, got the ballet shoes out and getting ready to launch a national ballet. It's a picture of Ashley and the family dog, Sully. This one's uncaptioned. This is September 23rd of 2017. That's the wedding reception photo we were talking about. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of a glimpse into what's kind of going on here. Let's take a look at Ashley's motion to dismiss, because that's going to give us a little more insight into what her version of the facts is, because like I said, we haven't heard her version of the facts yet. But we're going to read it together now. And then we're going to look at the stand your ground hearing, which was as a result of this. This was actually a motion to dismiss. So let's take a look just at the factual. This is her version of facts and events. Oosh, that's bright. This was filed in February of 2023, very first of 2023. So what's interesting to me is that so many reports that we've seen in news articles that have even come out recently don't have anywhere this version of events in it. They're picking up from old articles that opine on what happened, but this is Ashley's version of events, as drafted by her attorney in the motion to dismiss. Here we go. And in this motion, she was looking for a judicial declaration of immunity under the Stand My Ground law and dismissal of the charges. So this motion was to get the case dismissed. And so when people say she lost her stand her ground hearing, right, the judge didn't dismiss the case. He said the case is going to proceed to trial. That doesn't mean that she didn't stand her ground. Does that make sense? She did not testify at the hearing. If she testified at the hearing, she would have been subject to cross-examination, and that could be used against her at the trial. So there was really no upside to her testifying at this hearing, and I can see why, as a strategic decision, she did not testify at that hearing. But the judge found it was not enough on paper to throw it out. So in my opinion, she's going to have to testify at the trial to prove stand my ground or self-defense or battered spouse. Okay. Ashley Linnell, I'm going to just star that. We'll look at it later. I love how all of you are supporting each other in the chat who have been through this. I love that. Aunt BB, Magical M. I love how you all support each other. If you're new here, feel free to come in and chat. It's a very supportive chat here. We don't tolerate bullying, trash talk, personal attacks. And as such, like those things. We don't. Kindness. Here I have a sign for that. Hold on. I have a lot of signs. Here's my sign for that. If you can't read it, let me full screen myself for a second. Be nice or leave. Be nice or leave. There are plenty of other channels where you can go and attack each other and spew vitriolic hate and nonsense and attack each other. Twitter's a great place for that. I don't do Twitter because I find the people over there to be horrific, and there's just nothing you can do about it when they come for you. And I saw some stuff that happened to a friend of mine recently, just in the past couple of days. If you know, you know. I'm not even going to talk about it, but I am horrified for her. I am horrified for her. My heart breaks for her. She's been through a lot of shit. Oh, sorry, I don't curse on this channel. A lot of horrible things in her life. And those anti-Karen Reed people are out there creating sock puppets accounts to terrorize her. And she's a good person, and it's disgusting. But I'm not even going to give them the oxygen that they so desire, except to tell my friend that I am supportive and I am here for her whenever she wants to talk to me about it. Gross. Okay. Here's the history according to Ashley. This is the history according to Ashley. After meeting in 2016, Douglas Benefield, the decedent, and Ashley were married following a 13-day whirlwind romance. 30 years her senior, Mr. Benefield portrayed himself as everything Ms. Benefield was waiting for her entire life. In reality, Mr. Benefield's presentation was a complete fraud. On the day of the homicide, September 27th of 2020, Ms. Benefield knew the following about her then husband. A, he fired a handgun into the ceiling of their kitchen in an effort to intimidate her. B, he threw a loaded gun at her. Oh no, we must do the continuous stroll. Why do you do this to me? C, he punched their dog in the face hard enough to render the canine unconscious. D, he regularly carried a loaded concealed firearm. E, he unlawfully, willfully placed a tracker on her car, and Ms. Benefield frequently observed him tailing her car. He was caught by a neighbor at night, standing in her backyard and peering into Ms. Benefield's home. That's F. G, he punched numerous holes in the wall of their home. H, his previous marriage had a history of domestic violence. Perception is the next section. Following Ms. Benefield's initial departure from the marital home in Charleston, South Carolina on August 28, 2017, she returned to gather her belongings and moved into a home owned by her mother in Manatee County, where the homicide took place. It is not difficult, given the history detailed above, to appreciate and understand why Ms. Benefield feared her husband. While physical conditioning played a large role in Ms. Benefield's career as a ballerina, she was no match for Douglas Benefield. In sharp contrast to Ms. Benefield's lithe structure, Mr. Benefield was a former naval officer, admittedly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, who stood 5'9", weighed 169 pounds, and was in prime shape. And then they attached some other pictures, which are here. And they're not in color, so we can't really see. But you can see that he's in pretty great shape, even though these are just black and white renderings. During their relationship, the deceased frequently represented to Ms. Benefield that he worked for government agencies such as the CIA, was a technical expert in advanced classified fields that required a security clearance, and trained with both active and retired special forces in hand-to-hand and close quarters combat at a secret location in the United States called the Ranch. I don't know what the Ranch is. Does anybody know what the Ranch is, or did he make that up? I don't know. But I'm breaking from the document for a second to tell you that, as in my summary to you in the beginning, what he did for a living was very, very all over the place. Nobody seemed to know, but he's telling her that he was in special forces, active and retired, that he worked for the CIA, that he's trained in hand-to-hand combat. I mean, is this like fear? Is he trying to make her afraid? Keep her in line? I don't know. Moody and unpredictable, he would all too frequently vacillate between calm and rage, Ms. Benefield never knowing what would set him off. He would often tell Ms. Benefield, "You haven't seen the warrior side of me, and you never want to." Next section is called homicide. On Sunday, September 27th, 2020, the deceased arrived at Ms. Benefield's residence driving a U-Haul truck at approximately 5:30 p.m. Ms. Benefield resided at White Rock Terrace in Bradenton with their minor daughter and mother, Alicia Byers. In the weeks preceding the incident, Ms. Benefield, her mother, and daughter were preparing to move to Maryland. Mr. Benefield had taken a temporary local apartment, and he too was moving to Maryland, although it was made clear to him and he understood the parties would not be cohabitating upon their arrival at the new destination. I'm going to break from the document for a second to say I've seen a lot of recent reports. Remember, this was in February of 2023. This is her version of the story. I don't know why there are all these recent reports saying that they were all moving in together in Maryland. I don't know. The ranch is a training center. Thank you, Lisa Cobalt Blue. Training center for special ops. Team Dice do. My uncle was CIA. We found out in his obituary. That's when my mom found out also. Yep. People usually don't say, right? If you're in the CIA, you don't broadcast it. But Lynn says training for CIA is the ranch. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Golden Mayor, my husband kept control over me with threats. My daughter would disappear. I'd never see her again. Right. Thank you, Janai. Thank you, Janai. It's good to see you. Janai says, just hear out both sides before you start saying you don't believe one or the other. My children and I are victims with the same exact experiences as her, and I will stay unbiased. Thank you, Janai. I know you're always very vocal and so supportive to other survivors in the chat and in the comments. And I love that. So thank you for that. Material facts. As the decedent arrived, Ms. Byers, so her mother, Ms. Byers, the grandma, and the minor child were leaving the residence to walk to the neighborhood splash park. A brief acknowledgement between them and the decedent took place. So they said their hellos, and then the grandma took the daughter to walk to the neighborhood splash park. And here's something else I've been hearing out there. And I don't know if it was on Vinny's show or whose show it was on, so I don't want to say or, blame anybody who didn't say this. But they're saying, oh, yeah, so, she made sure that the grandma and the kid were, at the park so that, she could off him. I don't think it was Vinny. I don't think he would say something like that. But that's the narrative that they're spinning out there, that she sent the grandmother and the daughter out there because that's what she wanted to do. How about the flip side of that is maybe that's why it happened, because there was nobody else in the house to witness it. The way that he's treating her that we're going to hear about. So I don't know. I found that to be like, wow, I can't believe that people are saying that. Actually, I think it was a female creator who said that. All right. 2, Ms. Benefield was in the garage packing items into boxes. After greeting one another, they engaged in a brief discussion about the pre-staged furniture and boxes in the garage that were ready to be loaded into the U-Haul. While the decedent began moving the pre-staged furniture and boxes into the U-Haul, Ms. Benefield started packing items that were in the rear of the garage shelf area. The decedent's mood was consistent with his prior history. Happy, hyper, and animated, arms and legs flailing one moment, then agitated, sullen, and intimidating the next, annoyed that they had not already moved with fixed, intense stares at Ms. Benefield. A discussion ensued about the order the furniture should be loaded to facilitate Ms. Benefield's belongings being unloaded first, since they would be residing in different residences upon arrival in Maryland. This annoyed the decedent, and he expressed frustration and anger by stating, "It should not be your house, my house arrangement. It should not be a your house, my house arrangement. We're moving together as a family, making a fresh start, but you're dividing us." Things began to escalate immediately thereafter. Mr. Benefield exclaimed that it is time Ms. Benefield began acting like a wife. Otherwise, he would have to pack her in the pod. Then it goes on to tell what a pod is. An anaerobic, non-moving secondary container ranging in size from 8 to 16 feet and used for storing and or moving inanimate objects by flatbed truck. In short, non-survivable transportation that Ms. Benefield clearly took as a threat in retaliation for her lack of submission. It was a refrain Mr. Benefield had echoed before on several occasions when he would remark, "If you do not cooperate, I will ship you in the pod and you won't like it because it will be hot and slow. If you're going to be difficult, you're going to go the slow way to Maryland." Just check in with you guys and see how you're doing over. Wine cellar infused. Yes, perhaps the grandmother took the child because they were arguing, but then that makes me wonder, if she did that, then why have the child in the standout if protecting her? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that having her child out there, especially before jury selection, so that any potential jurors who have looked at the news may know that she's out there, it's not helpful. Expressing then that he needed to make room in the pod, the deceased was not dissuaded by Miss Benefield, telling him the pod was full, packed to the brim. Let's see footnote 1. Ms. Byers rented the pod to pack and transport her and Ms. Benefield's household belongings to Maryland. Mr. Benefield had no personal property in the pod and had no reason to access the pod. Instead, he attempted to gain access to the pod but found it locked. He demanded the key, insisting that he needed to make room in the pod. Ms. Benefield denied having the key or knowing where her mother put it. The decedent continued to insist that Ms. Benefield unlock the pod. Ms. Benefield's inability to provide the deceased with the key to the pod angered him. Confronting Ms. Benefield, the deceased moved in close, crossed his arms, and glared at Ms. Benefield. Concluding she was defiant, he grew tense, shoulders raised, his fists clenched, heavy breathing, and sharp, staccato, derisive comments spewed forth. As in South Carolina, Ms. Benefield was concerned for her safety and wanted to avoid antagonizing the decedent. Ms. Benefield attempted to de-escalate the situation by redirecting the conversation and calm him by speaking softly and positively. He would have none of it, and in an effort to protect herself, she moved away from him to the rear of the garage and resumed packing. I'm just going to break to say she tried to do all the things that they tell you to do to de-escalate the situation. Maybe she was hoping that her mother would get back there quickly enough that it wouldn't reach critical mass, which is the title of the next section. Critical mass. Her efforts having been rejected, the deceased responded by growing increasingly aggressive and threatening. The decedent began to hover over the top of Miss Benefield in an intimidating manner while she was bent over, packing boxes in the garage. Fists clenched, arms jiggling as if getting ready for physical contact, Miss Benefield feared he was going to lash out. In an effort to extract herself from the situation, she attempted to persuade the deceased to leave by remarking very gently that she was exhausted and was finished for the day. It fell on deaf ears. Mr. Benefield acknowledged her comment, but kept on packing and loading. So she's trying to get him out of there, and he won't get out of there. Afraid to command him to leave, in another effort to put even more distance between them, Ms. Benefield left the garage and entered the house, where she continued to pack boxes and move them into the garage. Thank you, Lisa, for thanking me for my careful work. I appreciate you and your super chat. Thank you, Jenny, for your 5. And I'm so sorry that this happened to you. She says, I thought I was tough and never a victim. But when a man puts his hands around your neck, you learn fast that it doesn't matter how tough you are. Thank you, Jenny. And thank all of you who are sharing your stories here and being brave enough to say it out loud. And I know that those of you who are able to say it out loud, there's probably a lot of time that has passed for you and that it's not fresh, let's just say, because it takes a long time, I think, to talk about it. Lisa, thank you for the 20. I survived then as a paralegal, lost a client whose husband killed her in front of her child. Ann Arbor, famous case. I left pre-law, changed to women's studies, tried to help women by my courses as a professor. I hope I helped. I'm sure you did, Lisa. And that's amazing that you did that. Thank you, Sarah Smiles. Sarah Smiles. That's a great song. For the 20, sending love and positivity to all survivors or current victims in this chat. You are loved. You matter deeply. You are more than enough. Yes. And you are strong and you didn't deserve it and it wasn't your fault. And you can't change that kind of person, can you? Thank you, Sarah. Amy Lou, thank you for your super chat for the 10. Thank you for discussing this difficult topic. It is difficult, but we need to talk about it because so many people out there, Amy, don't understand it. And they're so quick to convict and judge without really knowing the whole story. And look, this is her version of events. We don't know if it's true or not. We weren't there, right? But it is real for a lot of people. And why don't we wait and hear before we convict Ashley Benefield? The next section is called assault and battery. While walking through the living room, the deceased body checked Ms. Benefield. Approaching Ms. Benefield from the kitchen area, and instead of going around her, the decedent's shoulders, arms, chest made contact with Ms. Benefield. Anxious but nonetheless caught off guard, contact was sufficient to cause her to lose her footing, stumble, and almost fall. She could not help but notice the deceased was mumbling under his breath and clearly hostile. Scared, Ms. Benefield realized the pattern of contentious behavior toward her was escalating quickly. Thank you, Mel Stiller. The problem with love is that we believe that by loving them, we can change them. We can't. Prince Lover says he acted out because they were alone. And I will ask you in the chat also, are there certain ways that a person like this, if this is true, may injure you so that it's not so obvious, like a body check might not leave marks, right? Might not leave marks. I'm just saying. Scared, Miss Benefield realized the pattern of contentious behavior toward her was escalating quickly. Again, while in the garage, emphatically exclaiming she was done for the day and wanting to continue the following day, the deceased, while facing the laundry room, and Ms. Benefield, while facing the opening of the garage, made physical contact, body check, with Miss Benefield, while grumbling about the delay and her being difficult. With no apology for the contact this time, either, Ms. Benefield was then certain that both instances were intentional. Once again, trying to stop any escalation, she apologized to him. Okay, this is where I was going to bring up Gabby Petito. We talked about it a little bit earlier. But again, Gabby Petito apologizing to Brian Laundrie to de-escalate. This is something that is common that women do, or men, or survivors or victims at the time. They apologize to get it to stop. Finally, while Ms. Benefield was entering the house from the garage and the decedent was heading into the garage from the residence, the two met in the hall while the decedent was holding a medium-sized assembled cardboard box. Ms. Benefield stepped to the side, to the right, and the deceased deliberately drove the box into Miss Benefield in an upward motion, resulting in considerable pain and scratches to her right side. And there's some photos of scratches to her side, and I've seen people on other channels also making fun of these. Well, it's just a scratch. It looks really old. I don't know. I wasn't there. They weren't there either. But to minimize these injuries just because they're not what you think in your mind injuries should look like that are severe enough to cause it a DV situation, I don't know. I don't know. Kind of gross. After again ignoring her entreaties to finish, i.e., okay, last chair, last table, etc., in a final effort to rationalize ending the day's activity, Ms. Benefield entered their child's bedroom to show decedent there was little left to pack and move. Standing in the doorway to the child's room, the decedent blocked Ms. Benefield's exit while puffing his chest, clenching his fists, and glaring at her. And remember that picture that we looked at on Facebook. Trapped and frightened, she backed up further into the room to put some distance between them, but sensed an attack was imminent. At that point, Mr. Benefield shouted. He knew what she was doing, or I guess he shouted, "I know what you're doing," and accused her of trying to force him to leave, get rid of him, and that he was not leaving. He could stay if he wanted to and spend the night if he wanted to because he was her husband. There he goes, asserting his rights to her because he's her husband, maybe like, I don't know, property or something. Here's a diagram of the layout of the house. You can go back and look at that later if you want to. Next section is entitled Remaining In, Burglary with an Assault and Battery. Momentarily rational, the deceased stepped back into the hallway, allowing Ms. Benefield to escape their daughter's room, where she headed down the hallway into the living room toward the front door. All right, so he's blocking her exit. He's doing all of the textbook things that you read about and most of you know about. And the question is going to be, was she fearful for her life? Right behind her, the deceased grabbed Ms. Benefield by the left hand and yanked her back, stopping her in an effort to leave the residence, shouting, "Where do you think you're going?" Moving around her so that his back was to the front door, he once again aggressively confronted her, thereby blocking her path to the front door while wagging his finger in her face and exclaiming, "You can't leave me." Ms. Benefield found the strength to then tell him outright, "I am done. You need to leave now." I'm going to submit to you that that may have been the trigger for him. Her command was ignored, which at this point rendered the decedent's status to that of a burglar. Now terrified, Ms. Benefield braced for what she believed would be certain physical impact. Her instincts were correct. Raising his right hand with a closed fist, the decedent drove his knuckles at the second joint into the left side of Ms. Benefield's head, i.e., temporal area, face, while exclaiming, "I am not done." The impact resulted in a sharp, numbing pain, which caused Ms. Benefield to stumble to her right side, after which she fled to her bedroom. Her worst fears realized, Ms. Benefield now believed her life was in danger. Never before had the deceased actually struck her. In the past, he psychologically abused her and sought to intimidate her by, among other things, holding her against her will, punching holes in the wall, harming their domestic animals, and shooting and throwing guns in the house. Thank you, AC. But this was way different. But this was different. Any restraint had been abandoned. As she entered her bedroom, Miss Benefield swung the door behind her in an unsuccessful effort to close it. The door remained open. She's trying to get away from him. She's trying to get away from him. And is it, oh yes, Tiff Knox. Hi, Tiff Knox. Harming the animals, says Tiff. Oh yes, he threw the cat against the wall one time. Another time he punched the family dog in the face so hard that it rendered the dog unconscious. But this was different. Any restraint had been abandoned. As she entered her bedroom, Miss Benefield swung the door behind her in an unsuccessful, I already read that to you. Here's a picture of her with her black eye. Remember, he punched her in the temple. And anybody who knows can also tell me that might be something that wouldn't leave a mark on the temple, but would blacken the eye. It would, because of the blood pooling. When we heard the medical examiner testify in Officer John O'Keefe's case, the Karen Reed trial, learned all about that, the swelling of the brain and how it can cause black eyes. Next section is entitled Life or Death Decision. In the west corner of her bedroom was a laundry basket and the cloth storage bin, which rested on top of the laundry basket. Inside the storage bin was a firearm that was legally owned by Ms. Benefield. Ms. Benefield retrieved the firearm just as she simultaneously heard the unmistakable sound of the door bounce off the doorstop. She turned and saw the decedent in the doorway to her bedroom with a fierce scowl. Pointing the firearm at the deceased, she nervously ordered him to stop. Here's a diagram. Here's her bedroom. Here's the doorway. If you can see my cursor. It's not a fly on your TV. Don't break your TV and send me the bill. The deceased did not stop. Rather, he postured like a mixed martial arts fighter or MMA fighter, blading, hands parallel with his chest, shoulders, moving his arms and hands in small circular motions, and advanced towards her. Now terrified and believing she was about to suffer great bodily harm, if not death, she fired the weapon. The deceased, undeterred, continued advancing. Ms. Benefield, in fear for her life, frantically moved in an effort to put more distance between them. Still, he did not stop coming toward her, and she continued firing. In what seemed like slow motion, she saw the deceased's legs go up in the air as if his feet slipped out from underneath him and he fell backward. Ms. Benefield immediately fled her residence, seeking help from the next door neighbor, John Sant. According to Amy and Herbert Carlton, two neighborhood residents who were out walking their dogs, less than 30 seconds after hearing gunshots, they observed Ms. Benefield running out of the garage, gun in hand, crying and screaming what sounded like help, run to the house next door, and heard pounding on the door. And that is Ashley Benefield's version of events. Let's go to the chat. Glamasseuse, how are you? Thank you so much for coming in with the 20. I underwent surgery to coil a brain aneurysm and discectomy and fusion from C4 to 7-1. C4 to C7. I live with chronic migraines. Massachusetts gave him 2 years suspended. This was as a result of DV. Oh my God, Susan. Oh my God. I think you've moved from Massachusetts since then. That's horrifying. I'm so sorry that happened to you. So I think you'll have an interesting perspective on this case as well. Thank you, Blessed Mom from Texas. Love you, girl. Thanks for the 5. Sending my love to all the DV victims. We love you. You're strong. XOXO, be proud of yourselves. Heroes, warriors. These are my warriors in this chat. And AC says, thank you so much. What you do is very important. Megan says, you will apologize for stuff you knew you weren't wrong in. You'd go along with stuff you don't want to do. It's easier to keep quiet and be agreeable than to make them mad. It sucks, but it is what it is. Thanks, Megan. Christy, a painter's daughter, finally told my adult children last year some of the things that happened so many years ago, over 30 years ago with their dad. See, Christy, people don't talk about it. Can I assume that at that point their dad was dead and then you felt okay talking about it with them because you didn't want to turn them against your dad because you tried to be the good mom that didn't badmouth the spouse? I get it. Pat Sanford says, I was very young and dumb at 24. I can't imagine experiencing this at that age. Thank you. Ashley, question, take a quick look at the Travis Rudolph trial in Florida. An ex-pro player, the ex-girlfriend was hitting him and sent her brothers to jump him. He won in court. No, that's not the one that I'm thinking of with the, there's a lot of video of another girl who I think was an influencer. And there's video of them in the elevator and it looks like she's punching him and stuff. That's a different case, right? Okay, thank you, Ashley, for that. I'll write that down. JP Eagles says, I've watched so many crime videos and they almost all ended the same way, the woman being killed. I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt and let the evidence speak. Thank you, JP. Thank you for that. On top, thank you so much for another super sticker. Lady Lieber, 3 months later, he pointed a 9mm at me. I was able to talk him down and get out of the house with my children and dog. My husband took his life later that day. I really feel for Ashley. Wow. I am so sorry that that happened to you and to your children. Thank God you were able to get away. And I mean, there's a lot of parallels here. She's trying to get away. She tells him she's done. She tells him he's going to leave. He had threatened many times that he was going to take his life. And your husband did. And I'm so sorry for all of the trauma that was caused by that for not only you and your children, but the ripple effects to everyone else in the family. And stay strong, girl. Melly says, I've also not made a decision on this. It's hard because I see both sides. I've been in a toxic relationship. So sad. But yes, I'm also waiting for more trial. Thanks, Melly. Shannon says, thanks for covering this. I don't know enough about this case to have an opinion yet, but Ashley's 6-year-old daughter standing outside the courthouse with a please keep my mommy free sign is gross in my opinion. I agree with you. Totally agree with you. Magnolia Gypsy coming in. Sometimes we try and keep it light. We try and keep a little comedy here because, these are tough topics to talk about. Magnolia Gypsy says, my address used to be 420. We constantly got our house numbers stolen in a good neighborhood. That's crazy and hilarious at the same time. Thank you, I Am Titanium, for becoming a new member. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Charlie Lynn gifted a membership. Thank you, Charlie Lynn. You're so generous to the channel. Arlene says that she appreciates all that I do. Love your lives. Thank you, Arlene. So glad you're able to be here today. Adam Drives Helen. Hello, my friend. Says, thanks for putting in work on a Sunday. Sometimes we need a regular routine, I know that so many of you are free on the weekends, so I try and mix it up a little bit. And I thought a 1:00 start time was good for my viewers across the pond and in other parts of the world, because for them it's evening. And for Australia, it's tomorrow evening. And so if you're around and you want to hang out and you're lonely or bored, thank you, Wrestler's Mom. I think I thanked you earlier. Kay Layla says, hi, everyone. There's a real pattern of Florida prosecuting battered women. When there's a stand your ground law on the books, it's not right. And Benefield is not the first. That is correct. Oh, Blessed Mom from Texas Warriors is correct. I sent the 20 earlier. Did I pull this up earlier? Blessed Mom from Texas, thanks again for the 20. Thank you again. It's up here. Sometimes I save them. It's not that I don't address them right away, but I want to save them for a specific part in the stream because either it's something I want to talk about or a question. So don't ever think I would ignore you. Says, I couldn't imagine having my 9-year-old daughter. I think she's 6. I think she's only 6. Holding a sign, let alone 6. Oh yeah, 9-year-old daughter, let alone 6. Imagine what questions she's asking. That breaks my heart. Love you, Melanie, and Cupcakes. Thank you. Love you too. Love you right back. All the way to Texas. Warriors is correct, she says also. Thank you again. Jody Arrington says, love your perspectives and insight on these difficult cases. Thank you. Thank you, Jody, for super chat and for the 10 and for watching. Because we're bringing attention to difficult topics. Wrestler's Mom, thanks for the 5. I never told my kids about what happened with their dad. My older 2 kids are now 20 and 18. Recently, my son came to me and said, Dad told me he hit you. Wow, that's interesting. Usually it's not the abuser that will admit it, especially to the children. That's really interesting. Let's look at a piece from Court TV that was broadcast right after what they're calling the stand your ground hearing, but really it was a motion to dismiss. That's why I think there's a lot of disconnect with what happened here. All right, this is going to also include some information regarding his first wife. So let's take a look at this. I just have to fast forward Vinny a little bit. I don't fault Vinny. Look, he covers a million cases at a time. It's hard for him to know everything about every single case. It's just his opinions sometimes that I disagree with, especially when he's on that tangent podcast with those 2 other guys. Actually, I don't know if you guys watch his tangent. Oh, listen, I'm in an unofficial competition against Vinny Politan to get more subs on YouTube than he has. Okay. And right now, as of last count, I'm at almost 65,000. And Vinny, I think, is at 70,000. So it would be so awesome if you would just hit that subscribe button below. It's free. And help me in my unofficial competition against Vinny Politan. But he does have 1 million followers or something on Facebook. I don't really do the Facebook. So I can't compete with him on Facebook, but I can compete with him right here on YouTube. And it would be kind of fun. In fact, I'm the one who started Vinny. to think differently about Karen Reed because I went on his show twice. I went on a different show with him, Profiling Evil with Mike King, if you guys know that show, all the way back in January. And Vinny was a guest and I was a guest and we were talking about a bunch of different cases. And I said to Vinny, listen, I said, if you ever want to go toe to toe on Karen Reed, call me because I have a lot of thoughts, opinions, and I've been through the entire court file, etc. So right after that, his producer called me to be on the show and I was on the show twice with someone whose name we don't mention on this channel, JC, if you know, you know, who tried to make me look like an idiot on court TV. You guys have seen it, you know. And I tried to explain to Vinny that I didn't think that Officer John O'Keefe was hit by a car. And we're going to have to wait for the autopsy reports and all that kind of stuff. He's at 70,000, around 170. So I'm nipping on his heels. I was really, really far behind him before. So yeah, if you guys can do that. And so he kind of, I think he kind of like started to see a different side of it. And then his coverage kind of changed for a while until like during the trial when he started having some just guests on there that I just couldn't get on board with. And I was asked to come on other times. And I would always say, well, who else is going to be on? And based on who it was, I would decline. Happy to come on and talk about any other case, except not against people like that other person's name who I won't allow on this channel, GSE, his mother. Well, I won't go on a show with her. And I won't go on with JC anymore because after that, she, you know, trolled me on Twitter, was calling for me to be disbarred, got her whole, you know, army of minions to try and attack me. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even like a Twitter person anyway. Like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this. I won't do it. So those of you who do it, enjoy yourselves over there. It's like the Wild West of no control. There's no monitoring, no nothing. People can just do, say whatever they want. All right, so this takes us back. Take me back. It's a Dave Matthews song. For those of you who don't know, I'm wearing Dave Matthews earrings. If you don't follow me on Instagram and you like music, check out my Instagram because when was it? 2 weeks ago at Jones Beach, I was about 5 feet away from Dave Matthews for the entire life. And my life is complete now. Some great video of it. He did a crowd selfie and there I am right in the front. And that is what I live for. Summer tours of the bands that I love, including Dead and Company, Dave Matthews, the Counting Crows. I love my live music. Really, what other reason is there to work than to save up for concert tickets? Because it's always an experience. Okay. Let me know that you can hear this. I think I have it set up properly this time. And this goes back to that. When was this Stand Your Ground hearing? Hold on a minute. I don't want to get the dates wrong. It was July of 2023. So this was 1 year ago. It's when they had this hearing on the motion to dismiss. Okay. Let's go. Oh, and this also Chanley Painter was in Court TV then. Chanley Painter is gone now. I think she's with Fox News. But I really liked Chanley a lot. Found her to be very empathetic. Oh, thank you, Sarah Smiles, for gifting 10 memberships. You're amazing. We're going to get, that's not even we need the memberships too. I mean, the memberships are totally amazing. And for those who are randomly distributed them by YouTube, I have no control over that, but welcome to all the 10 new members. Subscribing is free, and that's how we beat Vinny. We need like 5,000 more. We do adore Melly, don't we? Most of Mom from Texas. Melly is a moderator for Vinny's YouTube channel. And she comes and hangs out with me. I love that. I love that. Another strong woman. And Melly, you're one of the reasons I covered that Nikki McCain case because you said you were from the area. So I hope that we can keep some awareness on the Nikki McCain case as well. All right, let's go back. Let me know you can hear this.
To the facts that Miss Benefield knew about Douglas Benefield at the day and time of this shooting. They are, beginning on the first page of our motion, that he fired a handgun into the ceiling to intimidate her from speaking any further.
Yes, sir. He inadvertently fired a gun in his home.
No, he testified under oath that he intentionally fired.
Objection, is there a question?
Improper impeachment. Go ahead, sir.
Did he ever acknowledge to you that he intentionally fired the
No, sir, he did not.
I was aware, or I had heard that there was an incident allegedly that a firearm was discharged in the residence into the ceiling.
that he threw a loaded gun at her, that he punched their dog in the face hard enough to render the dog unconscious?
Big dog, big nails, jumped up in his lap. And he was frustrated and it hurt. Aggressively pushed.
Did he ever tell you that he regularly
And it hurt because the dog had long nails. So you're defending him punching the dog into unconsciousness? Okay.
carried a loaded firearm?
Of course.
That he unlawfully placed a tracker on her car, and Ms. Benefield frequently observed him tailing her car, that he was caught by a neighbor at night standing in her backyard and peering into Ms. Benefield's home. You are aware, are you not, of an incident where Mr. Benefield was seen by a neighbor at night standing in her yard?
Sorry. Yeah, actually, we discussed that during the deposition. I remember because I had some questions about it myself.
Did he acknowledge to you that he placed a tracker on Miss Benefield's car?
No, sir.
Did he admit to you and acknowledge that he was caught by a neighbor of Miss Benefield's at night, standing in the neighbor's yard, peering into Miss Benefield's window?
I don't remember that from him.
Is that something that you think you'd recall?
Yes, sir.
Is that something that you would expect of the Douglas Benefield that you knew as well as you did?
It's a possibility, not a regular habit of his.
That he punched numerous holes in the walls of their home, and that his previous marriage had a history of domestic violence?
I knew about one punch.
And what was the reason for that punch?
Frustration.
And she discussed with you her fear that he poisoned his first wife and perhaps her as well.
She admitted that she didn't have any proof of that, but she was suspicious that he had poisoned Renee, and that she therefore had similar suspicions that he might attempt to get rid of her.
This is what Miss Benefield knew and believed on that day.
Wait until they start on social. Wait until they start discussing, judging every outfit Ashley Benefield wears to court like they did to Karen Reed. Just wait for it. I'm predicting it now. Did you see the beautiful suit she had on, the beautiful blue suit she had on in the shot before this? Wait until they start. It'll come.
Never heard from her, but trying to use all of what happened in their relationship from her perspective, I guess, from what Doug said or what other people heard, to try to prove that at that moment that she shot and killed him, she was in fear for her life. I don't think it's going to work. But we kind of got a preview of maybe where they're going to go.
Why do you think it's going to work? Vinny, why don't you think it's going to work? Vinny, did you read the motion papers that I just read? Because that's what this hearing was about. Vinny, I love you. Vinny, I've loved you for 30 years. I've loved you. I've looked at your blue eyes for 30 years since you were covering the OJ trial and I was a young lawyer. Why do you think it's not going to work?
If this thing goes to trial. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, who was inside the courtroom today and is joining us tonight outside that Manatee County courthouse. Chanley, great to see you. Let me ask you just first off the top, were you surprised that she didn't testify?
Absolutely. I was looking forward to her taking the stand and telling her side of the story, especially after yesterday, Vinny, where there was this argument between the attorneys on whether or not the judge could even consider her motion as substantive evidence in making a decision. That's still an outstanding matter that the judge is going to have to decide whether or not what she put forth in that motion is proper for this part of the process? State says no, defense says yes. We shall see.
It just seems that if you're claiming stand your ground, you've got to like get that your state of mind, your fear in that moment. And we didn't hear anything about that. We heard about something that happened before during the course of this relationship. Oh, great. So the defense ended up, they read some.
Melly, you can tell him I said that. You can tell him I said that. And then somebody says he's probably right, it's Florida. Yeah, but in Florida, it's the stand my ground law. You don't even have to retreat if you feel like you're in, it depends. You know what? I'm going to say, I can't read your name. 7, little boo 7. It's going to depend on the jury, right? It's going to depend on the jury, whether there's a lot of women on the jury. Look, we saw the jury in the Maya Kowalski case award $260 million in a lawsuit against Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. So juries in Florida can be very good.
Some of the victim, Doug Benefield's own statements, and they're trying to use that.
They are trying to use that. And again, it goes back to that 105-page motion to dismiss, the impetus of this stand your ground hearing. The defense, as you just played, citing it on cross-examination, but not calling any witnesses to put forth when it did become their turn. Now, in this motion to dismiss, the defense attaches several exhibits from the prior family law court or child custody battle depositions from years ago about those previous allegations of violence within the marriage, stemming back for 2017 or so when they lived together at the time. And so Doug's own words are within this document. Here's an example that is from one of those depositions talking about the time that she alleges that Doug fired a handgun into the ceiling of the kitchen. And Doug is asked about it in a deposition. He says, so out of complete and utter frustration, no anger whatsoever, I don't remember feeling a single iota of anger. It was purely utter frustration. And so, question, what happened? Doug says, the gun's sitting in front of me, and I pull it out of the sleeve, and I shot at the ceiling. Also in this motion, Ashley in 2019.
I mean, I'm going to stop here because, again, this is Doug's testimony, okay? What happens with the gun? That's the question. This is in a deposition, prior deposition. Answer, she wouldn't stop, just completely would not stop. And so out of complete and utter frustration, no anger whatsoever, I don't remember feeling a single iota of anger. It was purely utter frustration. And so, all right, do you hear him trying to justify what he did by pulling a gun out and shooting the ceiling? And he's trying to say, I wasn't angry at all. I was just frustrated. Not even an iota of anger was I feeling. It was purely utter frustration. I was just frustrated. And so the lawyer says, what happened? And he says, the gun's sitting in front of me, and I pull it out of the sleeve and I shot it at the ceiling. What? And these are his words that are going to be used against him. So psychopathic, says Aaron Morgan.
Files a police report wanting to document also what she cites in this motion. A time her husband put a tracker on her car, and she attaches to this report a text from her husband that says, in Doug's words, I will promise you going forward, I won't do anything stupid or embarrassing like I did with Waterworks or back early in the year when I put Eva's tracker on your car. So she's also citing that as.
So he put like a low jack on her car. Do they still make low jacks? Everybody remember the low jack? He put a low jack on her car. Okay. What is Waterworks? Does anybody know what he's referring to when he says Waterworks? I will promise you going forward, I won't do anything stupid or embarrassing like I did with Waterworks. Is that the name of the, no, that's not the name of the cat. We saw the cat's name on Facebook. We're back early in the year when I put Eva's tracker on your car. So he admitted putting a tracker on her car. Remember LoJack's Lamassus? Yep. Plain Mary Jane, took me way too long to realize LoJack is the opposite to hijack. Oh, that's interesting. I think I just learned that just now. Thank you for that. Corn Pope, he's rationalizing shooting the ceiling during an argument as justified by no anger because he knows his anger is a problem. It's defensive. Yep. Pierre, hello, Pierre. Pierre remembers LoJack. Prince Lover says, tracking the car is beyond. Yeah, so it's a LoJack was a thing. I don't know. It's like a tracker that somebody could stick on the underneath of your car. I don't know if it was magnetic or what. But it was back in the day. I mean, that was like before even like probably cell phones, right? They called it a LoJack. So if your car was stolen, they could track it for you. That's what it was for. Before like cars had all these fancy electronics inside of them and stuff. So I don't know what he's talking about, waterworks, but
something that would have intimidated her while they were together. And then in the closing arguments today, Vinny, the defense brought up some of those allegations that allegedly Doug abused his previous wife, Renee. Let's watch.
I loved you, though finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on our New Year's Eve, on our honeymoon, because you were having trouble.
That was a text message from his late wife. Kicking me so hard on our honeymoon. Let's take that back.
Year's Eve on our really what you pretended to
abused his previous today. Vinny, the defense brought up some of those allegations that allegedly Doug abused his previous wife, Renee. Let's watch.
I loved you, though finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on our New Year's Eve, on our honeymoon, because you were having trouble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Shelley's
the defense
like, oh,
is
okay.
reading a text that was from Renee to Doug during their marriage, and that was sent to Ashley while they were together. So again, she's using that, Vinny, to cite back to what was all in her mind, like you said, her state of mind in those moments leading up to the night of September 27, 2020, when she pulled the trigger on her husband. She felt in fear of her life. Ultimately, though, the state saying today, none of that is in evidence, as you said, that was testified to inside the courtroom at this phase of the process.
Yeah, it's. I've never seen anything quite like this. We'll see if it's effective. At the end of the day, it does give us a preview, though, of what we could expect if and when this goes to trial, where the attacks will be on the victim. Because in a self-defense case, that's what you do. You go after the victim because you say the victim was the wrongdoer in all this. So I know you've spoken with Eva, Doug's daughter. What did she have to say about these allegations?
Yes, I did speak with Eva on several occasions, and she was actually glad that today the defense did not put on a case, did not call witness after witness that she would have to sit through and hear, according to her, lie after lie about her father when he was alive. So she was relieved on that end. But I also asked her about how hearing those allegations within the testimony and the motion, how that affected her. Let's watch.
It's angering, to say the least, just because I do know that they're not true, and I know that she is lying. But I do think that a lot of people, hopefully including the judge, will see that she's lying.
She also says it's angering to watch her former stepmother be able to walk in and out of the courtroom. She's out on bond. She has an ankle monitor. She does have a curfew of 11 o'clock. These conditions, of course, she has to meet while out on bond. But she knows and in her heart that Ashley is guilty and would probably kill again, according to Eva, because once you kill someone you love like that, you have a propensity, according to Eva. But she also says it's hopeful that the judge will make the right decision in this stand your ground hearing and looks forward to the trial.
And we've been talking about this, the state of mind, how important it is, but both sides were making arguments about. Ashley's state of mind at the time, because that's what's 1,000% relevant here.
Absolutely. And here in Florida law, it's what was in the mind of the defendant compared to an objective, reasonable person standard under the same circumstances. The judge outlined that very clearly inside the courtroom yesterday. But in order to do that,
Here's another problem she's going to have, and I'm going to predict this now because I've seen it. I saw it happen in Karen Reed. She's a beautiful woman. Can we all agree that she's a beautiful woman? For some reason, people like to attack publicly beautiful women. I don't know why that is, but she's going to get it a lot worse out there. Social media land. Let me know if you think I'm right about that. We'll see. Trial hasn't started yet. Jury selection's tomorrow.
he has to have evidence of what her state of mind was at the time. And so today, the defense in closing urged the judge to consider that she did fear her husband, reminding the judge of Doug's alleged prior acts of violence. But again, something the state in rebuttal really responded to as not evidence to consider in this phase. Let's watch.
Given what she knew on that day about Douglas Benefield, boy, did she have every reason to fear him.
People are asking if this is still her attorney. Yes, this is still her attorney. His name is Neil Taylor. The coverage that we've seen so far, we only have seen the back of his head for some reason. I hope that the pool photographer who's going to be assigned to this trial streaming is going to have some views of the front of their faces, because we like to see the attorneys when they speak. And somebody said in chat that he reminds him of Bruce Cutler, and I have to agree, he does. It reminds me of Bruce Cutler a lot. I think his voice has a lot of gravitas. I think he's so far, from what I've seen, he's a fierce advocate. So this is going to be a really interesting trial to watch.
Especially after he refused to let her leave her own home. According to Cummings, he lost the right to be present at that moment and was a trespassing burglar. By appeasing him, that was her way of best protecting her child, by going along with him, keeping him at bay. These were quotes from Dr. Broder, who was their witness.
Judge, the state has not addressed the facts in the motion.
Wait. Drama must remain on the stage says that his ex-wife's nickname is Waterworks because she cried too much. Wow. So he basically admitted what happened with the ex-wife, or the ex-wife. It was his wife, his late wife. She died 9 months before he met Ashley. Wow.
Because they're not evidence. The argument that was made might be okay for sitting around in a living room talking to your friends. However, the legislature and the Supreme Court of Florida have defined very strict laws for rules of evidence and what is reliable and what is allowed to be viewed as evidence. And an unsworn to motion written in the fantastical way that this motion is written, if the court has read it, then I'm sure you know, it is written more like a fiction novel than a legal memorandum.
So again, this Judge Vinny will have to decide whether or not that motion, that's not a sworn statement by Ashley Benefield, who didn't take the stand in this case, if he can consider all of that as part of the analysis of the stand your ground hearing. You heard the prosecutor say that's not proper under state law here. And of course, it seems to me a little bit self-serving, which didn't take the stand and can't be cross-examined.
Yeah. Making the arguments through the words of a lawyer, writing a motion versus like a sworn affidavit or a deposition testimony or getting on the stand during the actual hearing, big difference. I mean, we have a little more leeway as lawyers what we can write, it's fascinating. I've never seen it done like this before. Okay, so when will the judge make a ruling here? Because we need a ruling here before we can get a trial date.
That's right. So today the judge did say he's going to request the transcripts of this hearing. That may take a little bit for him to get because he wants to write out his opinion. He wants to cite to the transcript because it is guaranteed that whichever side loses this is going to appeal this decision. So he's allowing, of course, time for that. So it could be something they try to expedite because the trial right now is still set for October, Vinny. So they may try to get it done before then. So that's not delayed, but we shall see. And as far as that goes, we will be here to bring that decision to our viewers.
Okay, so this was a year ago. Somebody just put in the chat that Shanley's back at Court TV. I don't know. I'm sorry, this was a year ago. I didn't want you to think that this was current. We were looking at this hearing from a year ago, so I don't think she's back at Court TV unless you have any other information or you just thought that that was a new, something new. I have something else for you that I want to show you. The judge did not dismiss the case. So that when they say the stand your ground hearing was denied, that was a motion to dismiss based on stand your ground. The motion was denied, so the case is proceeding to trial. That trial is starting with jury selection tomorrow. And we will start covering it gavel to gavel when opening statements start, which is probably going to be perhaps on Tuesday. So there's something else that I wanted to look at. And this happens to also be from Vinny. And this is that has something to do with cousin Tommy. Cousin Tommy Benefield has been like the spokesperson for the family. And I want to take a look at this for a second. All right, here we go. Getting a lot of Vinny today. Let me know what you think of cousin Tommy. Let me know if you can hear it.
Again, this is in family court, and stuff gets ugly in family court. So let's hear from the other side. Joining us tonight from Atlanta, Georgia, Doug Benefield's cousin, family spokesperson, Tommy Benefield, back with us. Tommy, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Vinny. We appreciate your coverage and your fairness on all this.
Okay, I want you to respond to a couple of things that we heard that she testified to there. And again, I read decision. The judge heard the decision during the hearing that the judge in this custody battle did not find her credible, but she said that your cousin joined the military because he was an angry person and a good killer and he was raped.
Well, I helped Doug get in the Navy in the first place, and he actually entered in a program where the Navy would put him through flight school, and as a payback, they would put him through medical school. And that program was why he went into the military in the first place. When the program stopped, he decided to go ahead and go in and continue flying off aircraft carriers for 3 years after that. I wouldn't say anger was ever a part of it. I certainly was closer than anyone to him through that entire period, and that was never part of the deal.
But he didn't really answer the question, did he? Let's go back to the question. He didn't really answer the question, right? So he's not denying that that happened. And look, that could give us some insight into the state of mind of Doug Benefield, right? I want to hear the question again.
Benefield's cousin, family spokesperson, Tommy Benefield, back with us. Tommy, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Vinny. We appreciate your coverage and your fairness on all this.
Okay, I want you to respond to a couple of things that we heard that she testified to there. And again, I read decision. The judge heard the decision during the hearing that the judge in this custody battle did not find her credible, but she said that your cousin joined the military because he was an angry person and a good killer and he was raped.
Well, cousin Tommy didn't really answer that question. By not answering, Crimson Moon says that says a lot. Somebody else said that's something that guys normally wouldn't talk about. So it's just a little odd. This is the cousin who's been talking a lot. Let's listen to his answer again.
Well, I helped Doug get in the Navy in the first place, and he actually entered in a program where the Navy would put him through flight school, and as a payback, they would put him through medical school. And that program was why he went into the military in the first place. When the program stopped, he decided to go ahead and go in and continue flying off aircraft carriers for 3 years after that. I wouldn't say anger was ever a part of it. I certainly was closer than anyone to him through that entire period, and that was never part of the deal.
She also said that he was a good killer and he had murdered and poisoned people. Did he? And if he didn't, who do you think she's referring to? Or do we not even know?
Well, I would say Doug wouldn't have said those things in the first place. Second of all, when people think of
Okay, cousin Tommy, how do you know? How do you know what he told Ashley? You don't know what he told Ashley. It's called coercive control. He never would have said that. Okay.
special operators in the military and post-military, you probably think of Jason Bourne and how he's able to do all these things. Doug was the tech side of things. He was the communications guy. He was the guy who invented technology that's coming to market, even in the months and years to come.
He was inventing technology now. That's a whole new occupation that we didn't hear anything about. Right. Were you there, Tommy? He was inventing technology. Well, we know he knew how to use a LoJack. And not only that, he had the tracker on his daughter's car before he put it on Ashley's car.
But that was where he was, not on the, physical side of it or the spy out there doing Mission Impossible direct stuff. He was the tech guy who supported other people.
That makes more sense to me. How about some of...
I've never seen Vinny speechless before. Vinny was kind of speechless, like, okay, yeah, okay. Really, yeah, because that was funny.
Supported other people.
That makes more sense to me. How about some of the allegations? And again, in what she's describing, it doesn't seem that she's alleging that she's ever been physically hit by Doug. I didn't necessarily hear that.
Until that time. It was in the papers, Vinny. You got to read the papers, Melly. Get Vinny the papers. Vinny was in the papers. That was the first time he ever hit her. How many more times should she put up with it until she fears for her life? That's what I want to know. How many more times? Is the first time okay? But then when he comes for you the second time, then first time is like a gimme, like the putts, like Auntie Bev, I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him like a mulligan, like a mulligan. Like you don't have to putt it out. I'll give it to you in a match play golf game. If you know, you know. How many times before you're allowed to defend yourself? Ugh. Ugh.
I don't know if I missed it. It just seems like she's saying that he's punching walls, he's throwing guns, he's firing guns into the air, he's screaming. What do you know about the relationship and Doug and these allegations?
So at some point it crosses over to physical, maybe, I don't know. Hey, he's just throwing guns and punching dogs and throwing the cat against the wall. And, it wasn't like he ever really hit her before, right? So do we believe he really hit her this time? Right. There should not be any DV mulligans. Thank you, Joe Schmo. There should never be any DV mulligans. You are correct. Thank you for that. Amen.
Well,
brother.
there's two things to support the fact that Doug was not that way. Number one, there was never, ever, even through just a month prior to Doug's killing, any accusation that he was physically violent ever to Ashley, ever in the relationship. On the gun stuff, Doug and
Wait, that you knew of, right, Cousin Tommy? Right, Cousin Tommy? So you know that it didn't happen, or you just weren't aware that it didn't happen? How do you prove a negative?
admitted when he made mistakes a couple of times, both in the first trial in trying to get access to.
Wait, hold on. Amanda says there was no evidence she was hit, though. Not saying there's always evidence, but in this case, she would have been photographed. She was. But I think that was in the custody case that they showed those pictures of her with the black eye that he punched her in the face. No, it was actually from this case. There were no, wait, hold on. Stop. Yeah, no, it was in the motion that we just read. The stand your ground motion, the motion to dismiss. There were photographs of her with a black eye. She said he punched her in the temple. So we did see that. They're not in color, so it was hard to see, but she did have black eye.
Their daughter in the 2018 trial that you played. But the difference was the night that they met, she was at a Secret Service presidential candidate event, Ashley was, and had a gun in her bra that night. She had always carried. And matter of fact, what came out in the trial, the Stand Your Ground hearing last Thursday that we didn't know, was she had staged 2 guns in the house the night of the killing, in addition to her regular concealed carry gun, which was in the closet where Doug.
She had staged 2 guns in the house. Apparently they had guns everywhere. But according to Tommy now, he's trying to spin the narrative that she staged them there. Okay. She was running away from him and she ran into the room where she knew she had something, a firearm in case she needed it.
You see the blood stains where Doug was shot and ended up on the floor. So if anybody was, working the gun program, he made the mistakes. He admitted to them. That was all admitted in court in 2018. The box you're showing is where.
Right, because there were photographs of it, and he had to admit it. He was trying to get custody, and he said, because we just read his testimony and his deposition, that he wasn't really angry. He was just frustrated, and, so he just grabbed the gun and shot it into the ceiling. Okay. All right.
She had hidden the gun in the kitchen. The other gun was the one that was in her backpack, and the other gun was actually in the bedroom, stashed away so she could shoot him in the bedroom where she did. The judge really in 2018, the reason that phrase, and we were very surprised on Thursday that her defense attorney used the phrase scintilla of evidence, because the court, the judge from the 2018 trial absolutely admonished her for lying and deceiving, and for Doug admitting the minor things that he had done, minor to some people, but certainly over almost a 5-year relationship, he made mistakes. He admitted to them. He went through counseling to confirm, and all the testing that was done on him didn't show anger at all.
No anger at all. Wow. I'm going to get a twitch from this. Ashley Linnell says, Melanie, will you be a guest host on Emily D. Baker? Let's get the subs up. Yeah, sure. Are you a mod for Emily? I would love to. Emily must be very busy. I've written to her before. We have a Dave Matthews connection. I would love to. I love her. I love her work. She's a pioneer. I would be happy to. If you have an in there, sure. Absolutely, 100%. Carrie says, not all abuse shows bruises. 100%. Kathy says, physical before, the target was the wall, the ceiling, the dog, his late wife, now Ashley. Oh, Amanda. Yeah, just go back later. I showed, it was in the motion papers that we went over. And there was a photograph of her with a black eye. And she did say that in addition to him knocking into her with the box that did cause the scratches on her body, he punched her in the temple. But she did say that was the first time he was ever physical with her. He also body checked her a couple of times during the incident that happened right before his death. Right, Rubicon. Cousin is ride or die, so I'm not sure he's helping here like he thinks he is. Normalizing violence isn't a good look. This goes back about a year, this interview. I think he's done more recent ones.
She also made an allegation that he was threatening suicide, that he would do it in front of her. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, before we get into this, apparently he also threatened to do that in front of his late wife as well, right? We learned that this is a common tactic. And as one of our viewers sadly pointed out earlier in the chat, that is what her abusive husband or ex-husband actually did do, threatened to do, and then actually did do it.
That certainly wasn't the Doug that Eva knew, his daughter, or any of us in the family knew, and especially his best friend in South Carolina, who married him those 13 days after they met. That would have never been what Doug would have chosen to do. What is a pattern here, and it came out in court on Thursday in the hearing.
It's like, why are they giving this guy a platform? I don't know. Okay. Well, I mean, a lot of people were given platforms recently on this network that did not agree with, but okay. Estrella, my ex used to say that, but said he'd take me with him. I'm glad we're doing this deep dive today because so many of you are coming out and telling us your stories. And I think it helps people understand this case a little better when they hear from people who have actually been through the reality of this.
Is Ashley tested on Dr. Broder's testing, where he was testing and evaluating both Doug and Ashley in the summer of 2020, just before the killing, that a clinical score, a significant score on a deception scale is a 70. And in Dr. Broder's report, Ashley's deception scale is a 92, nearly off the scale in deception. And that's what seems to be.
What is a deception scale? And is this Dr. Broder going to testify at the trial? I have questions, but that's interesting to me. Leah says, good for her having guns available in multiple places in her home. Not uncommon, especially here in Florida. Correct.
The pattern all the way throughout. She was deceiving him on the weekend that she killed him. Up until Sunday midday, they were all moving in together. It's what she told him consistently through the reconciliation process. They were pulling their divorce papers. They were getting back together. She told Dr. Broder in private, of course, that she was never going to reconcile, that she was just trying to get the case to Maryland to start over with a new court.
So
Tommy,
that's going to be their position, that she was trying to get it moved to Maryland to get a new court, that she was forum shopping. Leah says, shooting in the air and ceiling is a criminal act with a firearm. Yeah, but she didn't call the police. She did not report that to police. That didn't come out until later during the custody hearings. I mean, she tried to get away from him as soon as she found out she was pregnant. Exactly, Kimmy. Thank you, Kimmy. Why are we still defending DV, DA in 2024? I don't know. Becky, deception scale. Well, that's new. Yep. Yes, it is. Thank you, Mary. Says hugs and love to all in the chat that have been going and are going through this.
Yes,
as always.
We're waiting to hear the results of the stand your ground hearing, and obviously we'll stay on this story, but we appreciate your time tonight and your insight, because when it gets to trial, Doug's not going to be able there to be able to speak on for himself. So when this stuff,
Yes, sir.
when this stuff comes up, a jury's going to hear it. So it's going to be a lot about her credibility in the moment, if and when she tells her story about what actually happened. Tommy, thanks so much.
It was a shocking Friday.
Yeah.
It was a shocking Friday morning, and you understand that when they'd arrested with none of their 9 witnesses and she didn't testify, everyone was shocked.
Shocking.
It is not shocking. Why would she subject herself to cross-examination? Because then it can all be used against her again. It was strategic. It's not shocking at all.
I'll be more shocked if she wins without presenting any of this evidence, but we'll see what happens, and we'll be speaking again. Thanks so much, Tommy. Appreciate it.
And that is Cousin Tommy. Somebody asks if he's going to be called as a witness. I have not seen the final witness list yet, but I'm assuming Cousin Tommy will be called. Thank you, Bayou Babe, for that. It was Travis Williamson, Esquire, who said that her lawyer reminds me of Bruce Cutler. Me too. Becky B says the ex-wife had a heart condition. Well, that's what they were saying. That's what the coroner said. That's what the autopsy report said. But I don't know that she really did have a heart condition. There's been some speculation about that. We often know that that was a coroner's report in that case. It wasn't a medical examiner, I think. Also, medical examiner in the Karen Reed trial, if you didn't follow that with me, for John O'Keefe, the death certificate was listed. The manner of death was undetermined, not homicide. And they still prosecuted that case. There was also no injuries consistent with being hit by a car. Thank you, Intolerant, for being a member for 3 months and says here to hear the real story. Thank you. As Galige, this is my first time, so I probably pronounced that wrong, and I'm sorry for butchering it. I'm assuming it's Gaelic. This is my first time saying that I'm a survivor. I was frightened to live in my own home. I'm free 5 years after 37 years of abuse. I'm happy and safe and have a great relationship with my kids. That's amazing. That is amazing. And I'm heartbroken that that happened to you, but I'm so glad that you were able to get out. Jean became a YouTube member. Welcome. Stara Smiles. Thanks for gifting 10 membership. I think I thanked you earlier. I'm not sure. Oh, thanks, Melly. We adore you just as much as you adore us. And thank you. All the cupcakes. Yep, here. Remember the club, that thing you would put on your car? On the steering wheel of your car so that nobody could steal your car? I totally do. That was back in the low jack conversation. This is amazing. Thank you for this, Taurus Moon Tarot, because I asked in the beginning if anybody could defend Ashley's 6-year-old daughter outside with a sign in a way that I could understand it, and this does. Taurus Moon Tarot says, her having her daughter outside is a way to teach her daughter early to stand up and speak up. DV hides in silence and perpetuates for generations. This little girl will sadly learn this young. Thank you for that perspective, because I can see that. I can see both sides of that. I can see jurors coming in and saying that's a terrible thing. Well, how could any mother do that? That's abusive. I've heard other creators say that. They think it's abusive to have her child out there fighting for her mom. But this comment makes sense to me. There's a book by Colleen Hoover that is being turned into a movie that is coming out, I think, sometime this month, starring Blake Lively. It's called It Ends With Us. Anybody read that book? And it is about generational abuse, and that's what it ends with us. Thank you. Thank you, Taurus Moon Tarot, for that. I appreciate that comment very, very much. Sherry D, thanks so much for the 10. Thank you, Mel, educating and bringing facts to this case. To all in the chat, you have thousands of supporters. Grateful Dead background on sub to V weeks ago. Oh, I don't want you to do that. I just want you to have people sub to me so I can beat him in this competition that he knows nothing about. Thanks, Christina. Autopsy didn't find any steroids or HGH. I don't know. Haven't seen the autopsy report. If anybody has it, I don't think it's out there, but email it to me. fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. I'd love to see it. I think it's going to come out. I hope it's going to come out during the trial. Thank you, Sherry, for gifting a membership. That is so kind of you. Anira, thank you for being a member for 2 months. Says it's a testament to you in this community that so many of us feel comfortable enough to share our experience. Thank you for creating this safe space. Thank you for participating in this safe space so very much, because it's you and your stories and your support of each other that I find to be so helpful to all of us. Patronus Glow, thank you for putting my email up there, and thank you for being an amazing moderator. I have not. So Pam says DV is a cycle. Her daughter standing outside can be teaching her how to break the cycle early on. It makes total sense. Thank you. I knew that somebody would have an explanation for that. And I knew that. There is a website up for Ashley that tells her side of the story. So I'm going to show you that now, and you can go and you can sort of investigate it on your own time. It's called westandwithashley.com. Put it up here for a few minutes. So if you want to check that out later, you can. It's westandwithashley.com, the true story of Ashley Benefield from her point of view. There's some text messages in here that probably have language in them that YouTube doesn't like. Here's Snuffy the family cat. Well, here's a text message from him and between him and Ashley, in which he says, I just lost it. I found my breaking point. And she says, and you took it out on a dog. And he says, fine, you can remind me. Ashley, I was stupid. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was lost. I needed help. I got help. And she says, and you threw a 13-year-old cat. And he says, how many times do you want me to say I failed? That all shows that a man who has never done that was under too much pressure. That's what happens. You break. I broke. I lost it. I know it. I got help. Wow. It's almost like he's blaming her for his outburst, huh? There's Snuffy, the family cat. Oh, I don't want to put it. Well, this is pictures of his daughter when he was younger. This is some other photographs of him punching holes in walls. There's some text messages up there that had some language in them that I don't like to use on this channel just because my viewers appreciate it when they have their kids in the room without headphones and they play me at work. We do not use foul language here. And bullet holes in the ceiling. His relentless pursuit of her. Some correspondence from the sheriff's office. And we're going to see a lot of this at the trial. So I'm glad we had an opportunity to go over this today, at least briefly, somewhat briefly, and go to you guys and see if you have any questions. So thank you, Nikki Lewis, for pointing that out. This is the website set up on her behalf. And it is purported to tell her side of the story. And as I pointed out, she does have supporters outside the courthouse who are advocates against DV, and they think that women should be believed. And they're saying here, this is the excluded evidence. This is not a fact-finding operation. This is a witch hunt. And a lot of people thought that about the Karen Reed case too, which is still not over. Tomorrow we will be back at 1:30 for coverage of the Karen Reed hearing, live coverage of that. So I hope you will join me. Shari gifted a membership. Thank you, Shari D. Appreciate you so. And the Pilgrim Shadow, the dire wolf collects his dues. The guy knocked out a dog. Always coming in with the Grateful Dead references for me that I appreciate so much. Lori Smith, thank you so much for your Cash App. Says, as always, thank you. No, thank you, Lori, for being an amazing supporter of the channel, as is Maureen Francis. Thank you so much for the Cash App. RB from buying a matcha latte and says, always three sides to the story, right? 100%, always. Always three sides to the story, your side, my side, and the truth. And hopefully we're going to get to the truth during this trial. And that, my friends, is our brief, almost 3 hour summary of the Ashley Benefield case, which will be starting hopefully Tuesday morning. Amy Lyncho, yes, we will be with you tomorrow for the Karen Reed case. Thank you so much. Oh, Glamasu, sometimes if you uncheck the notification bell and then recheck it, they'll come back. YouTube's having a lot of issues lately, as is StreamYard, but the notifications are through YouTube. Also, make sure your phone is enabled to accept notifications from YouTube. That could be a setting in your iPhone or whatever phone you use. Those are victim blaming in the chat make me sad, says your mom. Deborah, Amelia, I love you, but I think you're wrong on this one. So sorry, I'll have to sit this one out. I don't know. I don't know what's right and wrong, Deborah. You're free to watch the coverage wherever you want to watch it. I'm just pointing out Ashley's side of the story. And I know that so many of my viewers and subscribers and members are survivors and they have a different story to tell. Thanks, Deborah. I appreciate that. You said that respectfully. I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm just trying to point out it's not as cut and dry as a lot of people want to make it seem. Poppy says, yes, she had to gently ask him to not make it so sweet. The tea. That is correct. That is correct. Grandma Sue says, if she's not in Dedham, she'll be with everyone here tomorrow. Melanie Parker says, as a reminder, Karen Reed is factually innocent. Yep. Oh, let me address something that somebody put in the chat in the very beginning. That somebody screenshot and sent to me because I found this to be very interesting. And I think it's worth addressing. It's regarding Karen Reed. It says, let me find it. Here's what it said. Still mad at you, Melanie, for your telling the peaceful Free Karen Reed to STFU and stop bothering public officials with complaints. You sided with the lie from Bev and McAlberts. You should know better. Well, apparently this person named Sue doesn't know me very well. I've never told any peaceful Free Karen Reed supporters to stop doing anything. I've been to the courthouse. I've met many of them in person, and they are nothing but peaceful people who are very interested in what's going on in their local politics. They believe that Karen Reed did not hit John O'Keefe with her car, and that is exactly where I stand, and I've stood since the beginning of diving into this case, all the way back in January of this year. What I said was that a person was out there posting a public link for the public to file complaints against the judge in the Karen Reed case. And I'm going to stand by that. I would not recommend that anybody file a complaint against the judge in the Karen Reed case because you don't have standing to do so. And because it's going to make everyone look histrionic, which is what the other side of the Free Karen Reed movement wants. They want to provoke a reaction. They want to make everyone think that anybody who thinks that Karen Reed is not guilty is crazy. And I would not, in any case, advise any member of the public to go out and start filing complaints against judges because you just don't have the standing to do it. And judges are protected with qualified immunity. So there's no point in that. That was what I said. Pilgrim Shadow says, thank you so much for the 10. Thank you, moderators. Peace be with everyone here today. Thank you. Boo View says, I'm grateful and appreciative to get to follow along with Melanie on this trial. Like, why is it that all of a sudden we're just not going to believe women anymore? We're just not going to believe them? Like, this is 2024 and this is still going on? Thanks, Clamasus, for the 10. The women at Canton have had balloons with bleach and water all over their lawns and gardens. Yuri is going to homes of women who wrote nasty things about Gemma Cave and Lizzie Proctor. Again, I saw that. Saw some ring footage of Yuri Buchanan showing up at people's houses and questioning them about messages they may or may not have sent to some of those women a year ago or something. It's continuing. It's insane. It is insane what is going on. Thank you, Bayou Babe. I'm so glad that you joined us today. I don't know if you've been here before, but we do like you. Believe but verify is my motto. We also believed Amber Heard initially. Thank you, Shell CD. Thank you. Believe but verify. I like it. Love you, Mel. Thanks, Zambi, ma'am. Keep preaching, says Shaylee. You're a boss, babe. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I will see you for tomorrow, my friends. Make sure you hit the bell so you get all notifications. Hit the subscribe button on your way out. Do all those YouTube-ish type things that the YouTube algorithm likes so people find out about coverage and that we're going to be covering this and that they have a safe place to watch it if they happen to be a survivor. Yeah, they're scared of rubber ducks. Where is Chloe? Melly, where's Chloe? Why does Buchanan still have a job? These are so many questions that I need the answers to. Love this. Love this, AC. Thank you. Chris Rock once said, you would think by now women would just rule the world, but they don't. You know why? Women hate women. Prove that wrong, ladies. I agree. I agree. Thank you for that. I can't figure it out either. I don't know. Till I got into this vitriolic world, I didn't really know it either. Is that the real Bob Weir? Is Bob Weir here? Bob Weir pops in now and again. I don't think it's the real Bob Weir, but wouldn't that be amazing if it was? Thank you, Erin. Thanks for coming in. Thanks. Please come back. This is a great space for so many strong women, survivors, to talk about their stories and to support each other. And a lot of really cool men have joined our community since the Karen Reed case. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Canadian, anonymous Canadian girl. And as I always say, thank you to the moderators for keeping the chat classy. Thank you to my members who love me enough to want to be a member of my community. Subscribers, replay viewers, please hit the like button on your way out. And thank you for being so freaking cool and such a great time. And remember, as I always say, to end every stream, be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard. I promise you. It is so not hard. Your life will be so much better. Peace. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.